It is 6:03. This is a special meeting of the Common Council of the City of Oneonta. And if the clerk would please call the roll.
Mayor Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy. Here. Councilmember Walsh Russo. Here. Councilmember McHugh. Here. Councilmember LaPartiechu. Here. Councilmember Carson.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington. Councilmember Wooden.
Here.
Councilmember Matheson.
Here. And if you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the remarks that I was going to make 2 days ago, I'm going to take care of now, and then we'll move into our meeting. So a lot of times when I'm making remarks, I've been told that we prefer if you're a little bit more extemporaneous. Appreciate that, but when I've got something really important to say, I like to make sure that I've got it written down, I've taken the time and considered the words, and so please bear with me. We have had a couple of years of my doing this, and in the earlier iterations of these sort of remarks, sometimes people would say this is a great time to go to their phone, and they'd be texting one another, and folks would be watching, would be looking to see who's texting whom, or who picked up the phone and put down the phone. But we're beyond that, so I'm going to ask you to just here, because I am the chief elected officer. I was elected not by ward, but by the entire city, and by nearly 2/3 vote. Now, they voted for something. Not necessarily me, but something that I was promising. So I represent the city. I'm not a fellow council member that just doesn't have a vote. And you wouldn't hire me to conduct council meetings, guaranteed. And it doesn't bring me joy. I was elected on my promise of a commitment to grassroots governance, with new and important opportunities for citizen engagement with neighbors, helping neighbors, and of building partnerships throughout the city to foster and support them. And I believe that the only way we change the trajectory of our city, and there are a lot of folks who agree with me right down to their bones, and we're teaming up. We have teams of people that are in this moment, right this very moment, engaged in the issues and the opportunities that face us. Lots who haven't recently, or in certain cases never, been volunteer members of a work group. And lots of folks that didn't know each other before, but they do now. And those meetings, those discussions, that planning taking place warms my heart. And it gives me confidence. Now, I have always been a team builder. It is my favorite thing to do in this world. And for all the recognized success that I've had in building teams in my various past lives, I have been stymied by this common council. With all the important and changing initiatives, and with so many of them attracting grassroots engagement, I would have thought that a group of 8 people would be more intrigued, would be excited to learn more, and be looking for opportunities to assist. There are some, as they can, doing that, and that only makes it more frustrating. It is such a worthy goal. It's the kind of goal where there's a great joy in working toward it and working together as a team. What a gift. If you're a council member, with all the unique abilities that your office provides to be an agent of change. But by and large, there has been no such buy-in. Not since day one. In my first 2+ years here they've been just a couple of council members who want to dive in ways that exceeded the norm of committee and commission meetings and the bare expectations of the charter, just a couple. By dive in, I mean folks that would be willing to do what was needed to ensure production's success. Sometimes brainstorming, sometimes physical work. Folks who would carry, or paint, or monitor, or march, or join work groups, and volunteer to move the ball down the field. Council members who would participate in the effort not as a one-off, but continually and passionately because it's our shared mission. But in my nearly 28 months as mayor, with an agenda that has engaged and motivates so many in this community, there has been an unfathomable lack of interest among many council members. Thankfully, not all, but for the majority of this council, there is no curiosity as what is or needs to be planned. No connection to the opportunity and the challenge or to the role that you could play in the development of strategies in the building of teams. The connection of our neighbors to the effort. Now some have, some are, and I so appreciate you. But there's so much. Every direction you look, we have a need. And from this office, you can see how life-threatening that need is to the city, and how it is all related, and how it needs to be treated holistically and specifically. I would love to work with the council individually or collectively as a team. But instead, and for much of the time I've been here, this council has been preoccupied by an unhealthy affection for micromanagement and politics, and it saps our time, and the time, and the energy, and the self-worth of our staff, who are among the best and most talented people that I have ever worked with. No one wants the competency to be second-guessed as to whether or not they can perform their job, or wants to walk on eggshells for concerns of obstacles, or new hurdles, and complications, or even accusations being levied. Public humiliation, or damaging misstatement, or zero-sum politics. We will be adding a finance committee. I'm convinced of the need. But the misstatement here is that the council members weren't provided the rationale, but because I've kept agendas for every meeting, I can tell you you were. And you were told that the termination of the finance committee was an experiment. It was meant to be a major time saver. And that if it didn't work, I'd bring the committee back. But in my estimation, and others, the finance committee had become a huge duplicator of effort and a time waster. And it contributed to the council's misconceived notion of what its priorities should be. But by reinstating the committee, I will not be reopening the doors to micromanagement and to further abuse of our staff's time and to challenges of their competency or their motivations. This council needs to become less engaged in the execution and more engaged in the plan. We have people for the production. We need you in the planning. You are the leaders, as am I. And I take that as a serious honor. I walk the walk, and I do the work. No one would challenge that. And I don't believe there's anyone here who would suggest that my overarching goals are wrong-headed, or that my heart isn't true. If my aim could be improved, and it can, always, I'd welcome it. tell you, there are at least 7 businesses downtown that will not be open next year if they don't have a transformative summer. There are so many other reasons for our Renaissance effort, but let that be the one that you really appreciate. There is a COVID-level threat to our business community, and we are the attending physicians. Our downtown will die without our immediate intercession. So don't hide behind the excuse that you didn't have a chance to review or discuss the plans in the 13 weeks that you had, or that you weren't asked to provide your input several times in those 3+ months, or that meeting agendas aren't open to new discussions, or that email doesn't work, or that I'm inaccessible. If this sounds harsh, it's because it's not my style. As you know, I hate talking like this. I'm no better than you. I'm certainly no smarter than you. But I am the mayor. And I don't work for anyone except the people who elected me. There's some concern regarding my ongoing dialogue with our merchants, but I will tell you, I am not pulling punches. I have their backs. And if helping isn't the intention, at least don't hinder. For the good of the city, we have to change the paradigm. And in a few weeks, we'll be discussing communications. I'm sure you're not thrilled with this one. And conflict resolution. Same as. I firmly believe that there is an opportunity, there is always an opportunity to join hands and sing Kumbaya, and I don't mean that to be a joke. I truly don't. I know that's not a surprise to anyone here. You guys know me. I am perpetually committed to it. I personally respect each of you for what you can bring to the city and have brought to the city. And I'm not without blemish. I'm not without weakness and blind spots. I am human too. But if we can take some time for introspection and let loose of some of our preconceptions, we can start these next important months with a new and stronger reconnection. All of us. Let's look for ways to be the team that our city needs us to be. We will all be grateful, and we can have some fun along the way. I'd like that. I think we'd all like that. Moving on to our discussion agenda with motion 1. Oh, I'm sorry, city administration report. Let me look through that first.
Okay, this is the report I would have shared on Tuesday. My computer died, sorry. So the Route 23 and 28 Complete Streets project, that's Lettuce Highway, South Side projects, is underway. The design is underway. We're at the point where the draft design approval document has been submitted by our consultant to New York State DOT for review. That review typically takes over a month. And we'll be having a conversation tomorrow with our consultant about when the right timing for a public meeting or a public information meeting will be, probably in the next couple of months. The Glenwood Creek Culvert Replacement Project, as you likely know, is underway. Works resumed on the east end of town between Park Street and Rose Ave, and that should be complete by the end of May. The traffic detour will remain in place for the duration of that project. We have received a number of concerns and complaints related to the detour. Not unanticipated, given it's quite a detour, unusual situation where you have Route 7 traffic being detoured through a residential neighborhood. Chief Witzenberg has communicated with his officers, as well as the New York State Police are helping out with a little bit increased patrols in that area, looking at any potential speeding that may be happening and trying to make sure that people are accustomed to the detour. So that'll be a difficulty, but fortunately the project is not going to be all summer. It should be done, like I said, at the end of May. NYSEG's contractor, DDS, plans to be milling and paving a roughly 10-foot wide strip over the gas main trenches that they installed last year on Morgan Ave, I believe Butler Street and West End Ave in the next couple of weeks. River Street reconstruction work has resumed. That is expected to be complete around the end of May. Interviews for the selection of an engineering consultant for the wastewater plant upgrade phase 2 project are underway, so we should see that coming forth perhaps at the next council meeting. You might have noticed coming in today, there's some carpet replacement and some other painting and such going on in City Hall. Pothole patching's underway. The asphalt plant is open. They did Main Street downtown this week, and the parking lanes will be continuing throughout the city. And Oneon Earth Day Festival is 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday, April 27th on Dietz Street and in Muller Plaza. We're expecting over 30 vendors and organizations, including 10 or more from the Oneon Farmers Market, which will be on Dietz Street. Some of the vendors will be over on the Muller Plaza as well. In addition to the vendors that are locating at the event, some local businesses have opted to offer specials that day. We'll be making sure to have some sort of communication for anyone that comes to the event that there are vendors, businesses up and down Main Street who may be offering a special deal. There's going to be food vendors, children's activities, some live music, and other activities. Advertising for the event is picking up. We'll be finalizing a map of vendors and any business who wish to participate, and a final list of activities, and trying to get that out and try to get as many people as we can to show up. So please spread the word. And that was all I had, unless there are any questions.
Comments, questions?
Questions about?
9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday, April 27th.
Just a question about River Street, as we start that up. Can you give a little bit more information on what the next parts of that are? I know we're gonna pave it, but I think Chris sent me something about basins.
I'm not sure the number. There are a number of catch basins that need to be replaced.
Is that all up
stormwater.
River Street or just where we did the construction?
So essentially Main Street to just past Scrambling Parish, roughly Parish Ave. I'm not sure if there might be some, there are none down at the end, are there? That's just a mill and pave, I think. Yeah, so just that section, Main to Parish. We're gonna mill and, we're gonna extend the milling and paving to Parish Ave. So Main to Parish.
Just so you know, somebody reached out to me about wanting to do a race, and they were asking about the construction, and I actually sent them to both Chris and you to talk to you guys, because I said I don't get the schedule, and that's not my domain to have the schedule in front of me, so.
Is there anything else other than stormwater work and then some Main Street milling paving? Okay. Yep.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Moving on to, thank you, Greg. Moving on to the discussion agenda, motion number 1. Motion that the common council approves the street closure application received from SUNY Oneonta for request to close Dietz Street from Main Street to Wall Street from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on April 29th, 2024 as presented. The common council further authorizes the city administrator to make any necessary permit modifications based on future planning meetings with city staff and the applicant. Do I have a motion to approve? Luke, followed by Don. I'll give that to you. Discussion? Len?
I noticed within the email chain that there was a request to waive the fee. Was that further discussed outside of the email chain?
We looked to see if they had any precedent of having their fee waived. We weren't able to find one. However, if there's a council member that would like to make a friendly amendment to the motion to allow them to have the street closure as being a feeless enterprise, that's your prerogative.
I kind of tag on to that a little
Sure.
bit with the, closing it down, how are we gonna do it for the, what was it, 2 hours they need it, or, I forgot off the top of my head what the email said.
It's 1 to 5. I'll let Greg speak to that.
I think it's essentially going to be very similar to the Dietz Street closure we've talked about. So Main to Wall will be closed off with barricades. DPW will be working during that time frame, so it won't be a call-in situation. So it should be very similar to what we've talked about the last meeting.
How long typically out do you have to file a permit to close down the street?
without having the application for me, I don't care if you know off the top of your head, typically we require more than the notice that was given in this case. 30 days?
It's 45 days.
45 days.
But receiving last-minute applications is not out of the norm. We try to accommodate those that we can.
So we do try to accommodate,
We try to, yeah, as long as we have the ability and
I just
the
want-
resources, yeah.
so it's fair across the board.
Yeah,
If somebody-
no, there are others that have submitted within the 45 and we've approved them.
But we still have them approved with paying the rate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and certainly the 45-day period is to ensure that staff have plenty of time to review and discuss if there's any special circumstances. Our staff did have a chance to review, and so we felt comfortable bringing it forward.
Further questions? Discussion, yes.
I have a comment. Lieutenant Governor Delgado is going to be the featured speaker.
Yes.
And so they're expecting like a couple of hundred people.
I think they're estimating somewhere short of 100, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I went over there and spoke to them, and they were talking about a couple of hundred, but it's an event. Who
It
knows?
happens in 24 hours. Sure. Further discussion? All right, the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy? Aye. Councilmember Walsh Russo? Aye. Councilmember McHugh? Aye. Councilmember LaPartio? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Wood?
Yes.
Councilmember Lapis?
Yes.
All right, it's not a motion that is presented here, but it could be of interest to the Sixth Ward, maybe more than any other council member. We still have some non-resolution around what we're doing with the curb cut at 70 Market Street, is that where it is?
Yeah.
And I wonder, Scott, maybe you want to either begin some conversation on what we want to do with that, because there doesn't seem to be a solid consensus. Maybe we can arrive at that, and potentially there's a motion that you might be able to bring forward to resolve that. Would that work for you?
Well, I don't know about that. So when we left that meeting, I'm not beating you up. You said that there was a consensus. Not beating you up. So those words were out there. So when I did the my email response back when Greg asked, I said, my thing was, because we did have where they do have attorneys and stuff like that, so I don't know how much I can really say out in the public. My thing back was, I'd rather not plant my flag on that hill, because we're gonna have to pay our attorney a large sum to do that, but a 16-foot would be, all right with me. I know some other council members felt differently. I don't know how, with those words being out there, do we backtrack now and say you're not gonna get it, you're counting on it, but there's also other things like with codes where they have to try to get what they want done to be able to do it. I don't know where we stand with that. I don't know how quick Greg needs that part of the answer for the Market Street construction, if that's something if codes can get that, because I'm assuming it's gonna need zoning at some point.
So, I'm just gonna pause you there. They have not contacted me about any of that, so there's
Okay.
no movement on that.
Okay. So,
As far as the construction timeline, that section is the first section, well, maybe second section, Chris, as far as the 70 Market, the south side of the street. They're doing the north side first, and then they're gonna come back. So it'll be a number of weeks before they're there, I think. So I would say weeks, not months.
I don't know, honestly. I don't know. And it was when it was brought back up, one of those things I was taken back on a little bit, but there is a point. There probably really wasn't a consensus I thought it was 3-3, and then when you said it was a consensus, I thought you were in the affirmative, but, so I don't want to put words in your mouth. Warren. I just
It's
don't
fine.
wanna-
Further discussion on this, where we want to go with it? Yes?
I'd like to make a comment. The whole point of the Market Street reconstruction is to stimulate business, and I don't think we should be alienating or upsetting current business owners. We should be accommodating. And it's a curb cut.
Okay, Luke?
So that's part of it, Don. I think it's more to encourage foot traffic than to necessarily.
I don't see, there's gonna be curb cuts there. And as I pointed out, across the street, there's gonna be a giant curb cut where the buses are. I don't think a curb cut reduces pedestrian, traffic.
I don't think it's a matter of reducing it, making it more safe for pedestrians, not necessarily reducing pedestrian crashing.
Scott, real quick, and then to Cecilia.
I just, going what.
No, I'm
I was
done.
just saying about the pedestrian, how viable is the plan that's gonna go change the entrance for foot traffic going into the park versus how much traffic foot traffic we really have now going through that area? Is that something we've been looking at, and would that change whether we do have this curb cut or not have this curb cut? If you understand what I'm trying to ask, Greg.
So when you say the new entrance to Newell Park, can you just clarify what you mean?
Cause you, not you,
like
I say, when I
foothills?
say you, I mean the city, had that idea of going through by, was it Ben Gunther's property? Where you come out to where they were looking at the, Jerry Jeff Walker bandstand on that presentation, that's where that walk was gonna go. So if that goes there, is that still a major concern about foot traffic where we're talking?
I think, so for me, the volume of pedestrians doesn't really change the general theme of walkability. But in this case, I think the issue is just, do they need a driveway cut there or not? There's no driveway there now, there's a sidewalk entrance to a building door, like a pedestrian door. It's not a garage, there isn't a driveway there now. I understand that they expressed a desire to install a driveway, apparently they haven't applied for that yet, they can do that anytime. It would make sense if there's gonna be a driveway to do the driveway cut while we're under construction, but I guess that's the question. There's no driveway there now, they haven't yet to apply for anything. Does there need to be a driveway cut? And they have two others and a parking lot behind the building. I think if the driveway is approved and it's installed, it doesn't make it certainly a dangerous or unsafe situation for pedestrians, but as I explained previously, any, number of driveway entrances is just another conflict point. So whether it's a high volume or a low volume of pedestrians doesn't make a difference in that point, in my opinion.
Cecilia?
The comments that I was gonna make have been said, so I don't need to state it.
Further discussion? Do we want to generate some sort of a motion one way or the other?
That would help make it clear. So last time, obviously it wasn't clear.
I feel like I'm on the hot seat, like I'm in the
Well,
principal's
so
office.
we can, yeah, generating essentially.
I guess if I was gonna make a motion, I would make a motion to leave the curb cut there, but go to what we're doing on the rest of Market Street at 16 feet?
So, for clarity, you're saying that the curb cut in its current width configuration leave alone?
I would leave, yeah.
I think it was suggested it's bigger than 16 now, we're suggesting 16.
Yeah, it's bigger now, I'm suggesting.
So you're
shrinking
suggesting
down
a
to
16-foot
like
curb
we're
cut
doing
at 70
everywhere
Market
else
Street?
on Market Street.
So that's, the motion is that we would have a 16-foot curb cut in front of 70 Market Street in the area of discussion here.
Just for clarity.
Yes.
Where there is currently no curb cut, or
There's a curb cut there, there's no driveway.
There's no
So
driveway.
if you were to drive through the curb cut, you would end up onto a sidewalk, like an entrance walk to a pedestrian door.
so this would make a driveway possible for the owners, is that the strategy?
It wouldn't, it would, physically, it would be easier for them to drive onto a driveway should one exist.
Right.
There's been no application for one or approval for one, that would be the process they would have to go through separately.
Okay,
So we have a motion, do I have a second?
So,
Lynn to second. All right, so furthering the discussion, then let me just ask, what is that curb cut currently being used for? How are they accessing the property and for what?
From what the owner had said, that they have some tenants that live on that side of the building, they pull in there to drop off groceries or whatever else. I don't know where they're pulling, if they're pulling onto the grass or the sidewalk. I haven't observed it myself.
Basically the convenience of the tenants in the short term.
Yeah, if they don't, if they're not looking to park in the back.
They stated that what they're attempting to do is basically a slip ramp through their front lawn. So they're talking about delivery delivery trucks essentially driving their driveway and going around the front of the property and then exiting through the existing curb cut that accesses their parking lot. Which is why they would have to get zoning review, because the zoning code does not permit that.
Continuing discussion on this? Again, so we're looking at, the motion is that we have a 16-foot curb cut in the stead of where we have a larger one, even though there doesn't appear to be a driveway connected to it. And further discussion, if none, then we can vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
No.
Councilmember Walsh Russo? No. Councilmember McHugh?
No.
Councilmember LaParishou? No. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Little? Councilmember Matheson?
Yes.
Yes.
We're gonna wind up talking about abstaining, but, so that didn't pass. We'll move on to, our discussion topic, of interest, prioritizing.
Can we move on? I mean, Greg kinda needs the answer, right?
Well, didn't he just get one that it failed?
Is that what we're taking, that because that one, I just wanna make sure Greg got what he needs to.
I think so. So what the
Okay.
contract drawings included was no new curb cut.
Okay,
And since we haven't been directed to put one in, I think it's clear.
I just
Right,
wanna make
Chris?
sure you had what you needed.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you, we just needed direction, so appreciate it. We're going on now to the reason that we're all here, which is the continuing discussion of the strategic plan as we start to determine its priorities and how that winds up impacting our decisions around the budget, et cetera. And I think, Steve, you're gonna pick this up from here?
I can introduce while he's getting up. So I handed out just an outline, and I thought it might be helpful if you had something in front of you to be able to take some notes as we go along. That's the two-page council strategic planning session paper. Also is printed out for ease of reference, the sections, excerpts from the comprehensive plan. You've got the section 5 goals and recommendations and the implementation matrix. This can be found on the city website. So we talked yesterday as department head meeting, and we thought it'd be a good idea for Stephen to take 5-10 minutes to just a brief explanation of how the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan kind of mesh together. So, Stephen?
Okay, so the title of our slideshow is Make No Little Plans. It's the intersection of comprehensive and strategic planning. Click the thing, there we go. So comprehensive plan, what's a comprehensive plan? It's a long-range planning document. Usually these are 5 to 10 years. Some cities like St. Louis have the same comprehensive plan from like 1948. So we're fortunate, we live in a city where we updated our comprehensive plan in 2019. It outlines broad community visions and goals. So in a comprehensive plan, you see things like make a more walkable place. Very broad, very general. Typically, you're not getting super in the weeds in these. They're mostly like visioning kind of documents. They include general recommendations for implementation. So if you see it in the packet, in your comprehensive plan in front of you, there are some recommendations like generically like make a form-based code. Like that would be the generic recommendation. Provides framework for land use regulation and uses. So comprehensive planning ties directly to zoning, and that's why I like it. But it also ties directly to how the zoning impacts everything else. So when we discuss comprehensive planning and zoning, what we're really talking about is like, well, if we want to build really big buildings, well, we have to plan for really big fire trucks and more police. And so what you end up with is when you regulate land use in specific ways, it's going to impact the budget, it's going to impact your infrastructure, it's going to impact your public safety. So that's kind of how these comprehensive plans end up working out into all the other sections of our like government municipal functions. It's required to be comprehensive, hence the comprehensive plan. So kind of going back to the last statement, when you say we want to make a place just better, you can't really say that. You have to have a comprehensive, legitimate reason for why you're doing it. That has to be tied to the zoning code, that has to be tied to like your municipal legislative agenda. So if we say something like, we want to build affordable housing in our comprehensive plan, and then we turn around and directly work against that end, or if we're like, we want to make a more sustainable community, let's put in a wood-fired electric plant. Like, those are all things that would be against our comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan is required to be comprehensive. Although it's focused on land use, it touches on all aspects of development and municipal operations. We updated ours in 2019. The most important part of this statement, it was created by a steering committee. So city staff did not create this document. It was a steering committee that had input from some city staff. It had input from outside organizations. It was worked through with a consultant that specializes in comprehensive planning. So the important part about this document is it was not created by like a cabal of city staff. It was created by members of the public. And on top of that, it was adopted by the legislative body, which is the Common Council. So next, there we go. So what is a strategic plan, which is what we're going to talk about tonight? It's a flexible planning document that is regularly updated. So strategic planning is usually done 1 to 3 years. And in that time period, what you're doing with your strategic plan is implementing the broad planning document that is the comprehensive plan. So what we would do is we identify things in the comprehensive plan, and then we come up with strategies to implement those items in the comprehensive plan. It's typically more specific and focused on operational processes. It provides key metrics or action items. It's tied to land use, but may include policy or legislative action. So instead of being very broad and instead of being very like vision statement, it's like, okay, if we want downtown to be more safe, how do we do that? We need to hire 3 more cops. We need to add an additional patrol. It's not visioning, it's, okay, now that we have a vision, how do we get there? Okay, created by staff with Common Council in order to implement the comprehensive plan and legislative agenda. So you guys come up with the legislative agenda, we use the comp plan, together we use the strategic plan to get from this A spot to B spot. So it's kind of what drives it. It's supposed to be a document that improves efficiencies. So instead of us sitting around visioning and being like, how do we do this abstractly? The strategic plan is, okay, now we have the vision done. How do we get to that vision? Finally, it may result in a new comprehensive plan being drafted. So as we run into roadblocks, as things don't work out, as conditions change, in our strategic plan, we might say, well, maybe these things in our comprehensive plan need to be updated, which is why comprehensive plans are typically updated every like 5 to 10 years. In a perfect world, that's how it works. Not like New York City where they like just don't have a comprehensive plan. So, in short, the strategic plan is kind of like, how do we get from a very broad vision statement to a very specific, ideally positive end result? Next slide. So this is a great quote about planning. It's where we get the title from, make no little plans, they have no magic, disturbance, blood, and probably will not themselves be realized. Make big plans, aim high and open work. Remembering that a noble, logical diagram, once recorded, will never die, but long after we are gone, will be a living thing, asserting itself with ever-growing insistency. Remember that our sons and grandsons are going to do things that would stagger us. And that's a great quote about comprehensive planning by a guy who arguably was not a great comprehensive planner.
And excluded women, but that's all right.
That's why.
From the 19th century, sorry, at least.
Right.
When is this? When is he stating this, do you know? When is he stating this?
Yeah, 19th century, late 19th century. Like I said, great quote on planning. Not a great one. Okay, that's it. There you go. That's
That was
the
brief.
long and short of comprehensive versus strategic planning.
Thank you,
Cool.
Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, we thought it would be important to kind of give that context because we're talking about strategic planning. This council certainly hasn't, even the previous one didn't talk about comprehensive planning because it was done in 2019. So like sometimes you might think the comprehensive plan comes first, we develop the strategic plan from it. We might be at the point where we're talking about strategic planning and there are things that a lot of the comprehensive plan, we've done a lot of that, but there might be some things that are not in there that maybe should be. So as Stephen alluded to, maybe this leads into a discussion about when do we update the comprehensive plan.
Which was last updated 2019.
Yeah. So it's not, I don't think it's a cart before the horse thing, it's just where we are in the cycle.
Cecilia?
I just wanted to point out that, and I think you alluded to this, but one of the things that struck me when I read the comprehensive plan for the city is the input that the public had in developing that sort of overall vision. And there's a pretty substantial portion of the plan that gives, I think, the public its due in terms of feedback and their vision of what Oneonta should look like.
So that is a requirement. So in comprehensive planning, it's not a staff-driven document, it's driven by the public.
Right.
It's typically driven by an outside steering committee that are made up of public people. It's not something that the staff sits and comes up with and says, it can be that way, but typically in New England, Mid-Atlantic, like where we're actively planning, that is not typically how comprehensive planning is done. Which is why there is all that public input.
terms of getting a dialogue going, it seems like changing the comprehensive plan without that public input may be a little bit problematic, but it's just something to throw out there.
Well, yeah, you couldn't do that.
That's
It
not
would
what we're
require a public hearing,
Right.
it would require an entirely
Right.
new steering committee.
Right, so there's a process.
Yeah, there's a process.
Yes.
Can you, Steve, can you just give us a very simplified idea of what that process looks like?
I mean, so a comprehensive plan update would require, either we'd have to get a consultant, or we'd have to try to do it in-house, which Judy said no on. So if we hired a consultant, you need a consultant, you would have to create a new steering committee, you would have to do all the public hearings, public meetings, so it would probably at least be a year.
Yeah, I can go through what we did in the 2019.
Thank you,
plan,
Judy.
Which actually I think started in 2018. It was funded by a grant that Otsego now had, as part, I think they got that as part of the DRI efforts, and we funded that. But the city took the lead on it. The mayor at the time, he appointed the steering committee. The steering committee it's in the front of the comprehensive plan, which I don't have in front of me, but it included representatives from, I know the Studio Liana representative was on it. One of the council people was actually on the steering committee. Ned Hungerford, our former finance director, and I were liaisons, to the committee at the time. We did things a little bit differently back then in terms of liaisons. But there was, I don't know, 8 or 9 people, somebody from the planning commission, from the city's planning commission, and then there was some business owners and other representatives, from organizations throughout the city. So, we had a planning consultant that we hired. They took the lead on the process. It was pretty much at least monthly meetings, for a good year or more. In addition to the required public meetings and public hearings, they did a number of stakeholder meetings with various organizations and people throughout the city that were identified in various pockets. So I remember they had like, college, student landlords was one group. The realtors were a group. There were just a number of different groups, and then, just regular people that just lived here in the city were stakeholders. They had meeting after meeting after meeting to get their input on the comprehensive plan. And then from that, they worked on, that comprehensive plan was an update of the 2007 plan. So they already had format for it, and they just updated what their, priority goals were. Obviously, they updated the, existing conditions in the city, the assets that the city has, various other sections in the, document. And then they got into the goals and recommendations, which, here, which identified 11 different policy areas, and then specific goals underneath those policy areas, for what we were working with and dealing with at the time. A number of them need to be updated at this point. We've gotten through a lot of those items, but it was a very, very public-driven effort.
And soup to nuts, about a year, Judy?
What's that?
Beginning to end of the process, approximately a year?
That process, that was probably a year and a half, I'd say, at least.
And that's why you don't see these being updated, because it's major undertaking, so that's why we see places that have, before this update, ours was from 2007. I mean, because it is a very involved process. And ideally, these documents are supposed to be written to drive, 5 or 10 years of policy, because it takes a long time to get all those policies and goals completed.
And our approach for the next update would be to, go for a funding, application, probably in the, consolidated funding application, if this year or next year, but this year would be great. And then if we got that funding, then we'd be able to hire like a consultant and get this set up and get going. That's what we approach.
Thank you very much. So moving from the comprehensive plan, thank you very much for giving us that kind of detail, to the strategic plan development and those delivery deliveries of, rather deliverables. Greg, had you thought about how we want to approach that?
Yeah, so I wanted to get, hear from the council. I mean, maybe we talk about where we're trying to get to make sure everyone really understands where are we trying to end up. So what is the deliverable of not just tonight's discussion, but whatever comes after that? I mean, the way I see, if you have a strategic plan, that should be feeding into our budget process. So maybe in that context, we had looked at an example from another municipality, and we'll get down a little bit further when we talk about the strategic priorities we talked about last time, and we'll talk about the next step. But does anyone have any thoughts on what do you envision the deliverable being? Or maybe the answer is we don't know yet, and we got to figure that out tonight. But I'm just curious what the council sees as where does this take us to? Where do we end up with at the end? So.
The deliverable, we gotta start operating within the means of what we have available to do things. And then try to figure out a priority list from there, what we can accomplish and what we'd like to accomplish, get that on a priority list and seek alternative funding and how to get there. Like, I know, when you use the environment as one, we're all trying to get towards more environmental goals, but it costs a lot of money, and we're not in a position to really go out and get a lot towards those goals. So I think that would have to kind of work simultaneously, but here's what we're gonna offer, here's what we'd like to offer, and this is how we're gonna try to get there, I think is a measurable thing. That'd be the step, the first step.
Yeah, one informs the other. Further? Thoughts? Glenn? Thoughts?
Right, I'm with Scott. I've said it for 4.5 years, we need to have a balanced budget to move forward. And so comprehensive is dreaming what you want to dream, and strategic is actually making the rubber hit the road.
Right.
And to hit the road, we gotta have a balanced budget, live within our means. So, I think Greg has brought this up to us before, of what do we want in a strategic plan, and we've discussed this 4 times through our term here, and it's, what can we afford to do? What is that level of service? You were talking to us before, on a strategic plan is, what's the level of service? We took a survey of it, and so, yeah, we'd love to have a larger everything, but what can we actually afford?
Yes, I'm sorry, Cecilia.
In terms of deliverables, it seems, just looking at policy area 2, economic development is a foundation, and specifically creating a vibrant Main Street. The city seems like a tangible deliverable that speaks to all of the kinds of strategies and benefits that the comprehensive plan details. I would include also sustainability planning as a foundational deliverable. Sustainability planning in terms of having staff and grant-making capacity for the city as a deliverable.
Luke?
Yeah, I keep thinking back to a lot of the public comments, especially from folks that were my age, younger, maybe a little bit older, about what they want in the community. As we talked about, Oneonta's getting older, but that doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I think a deliverable can be, we build a community, and this might be too big of an idea, but the idea of we're appealing to a younger group of folks coming into Oneonta. It's great that we have folks staying in Oneonta. It's great, but I don't believe there's a lot of folks that are in the elder population moving into Oneonta. It's more people are staying. And it's typically younger folks that are moving into Oneonta. So ensuring, kind of lining up with strategic priority number 6, community inclusiveness, and 4, livable and well-developed community. Really bringing those values forward that younger folks think is important. If we want to attract more folks, we have to really work to ensure that our goals are in line with their values.
Don?
When Mayor was running for election, I remember very well when you delivered your campaign speech, you were talking about 1,000 new people, young people moving into Oneonta, and that was your main goal, as I recall.
Still is.
That and Main Street revitalization. And one of the things that the mayor had talked about was the advantage of remote working, and that was something that we could promote, I think. That would be a good thing for the city.
Remote working, following through on trends, evidence-based practices that are showing, Steve's talked a lot about, to us about a lot of developments in planning, in how we develop Market Street. They're evidence-based, and it's a lot of younger folks perhaps aren't as into strategic planning and streetscapes as we are, but the end result is more appealing to younger folks. Ithaca Commons is a great example of that.
Is that one?
Ithaca Commons. I was just there this weekend. I'm not saying Ithaca Commons in Oneonta, but that kind of creative thinking.
That's where they closed the street right downtown?
It's a pedestrian mall.
Yeah, I've been there, it's very
Yeah.
nice. It sort of works even in the winter.
Oh, it's great.
So under quality of life, policy area 3, QL 9, it says ensure zoning code supports people with addictions, recovering from addictions, includes substance abuse treatment facilities, supportive housing, mental health facilities. The city should ensure zoning regulations and that facilities can be built to, so interesting that we have this already set forward in here.
Well, so I just wanna jump in there real quick. Our updated zoning code downtown does allow all those uses. It was specifically added to the uses.
Based on this.
Yeah. The zoning's being updated based on the comments.
I didn't hear what you said.
So the zoning code doesn't specifically prohibit, uses that are recovery oriented. Cause the comprehensive plan specifically stated that we should allow those types of uses. Which is why when we brought in the use categories in the downtown zoning ordinance, we got rid of specifically saying, you can't open this type of facility, we're just like, any business, as long as it's not an adult business or categorized as an adult use, is permitted. So if you wanna open a maker space that turns table legs all day, you can do that. If you wanna open you name it, sky's the limit, pitch us an idea, pretty much anything goes. Housing was the same way, we allow accessory dwelling units, we allow recovery housing, sky's the limit, pitch us an idea. So instead of going with like the typical Euclidean zoning downtown where you're like, oh, you wanna open a laundromat, well, you can't do that, but you can open a laundry washing facility because that's on the use table. We got rid of all that stuff. So it's very, very simple to open a business downtown. Give us an idea, we're pretty much good to go.
Bryce?
Oh, and Shannon hit it right on the money. I was just gonna say similar to Shannon about quality of life and how it connects with downtown as well, some of those like priorities. The only reason why I say that is a lot of, I've noticed through Bassett the last 5 or 10 years, there's been a lot of wellness resources that have decreased, even through like Otsego County. There's waiting lists for counseling, and counseling is expensive. So these are just little things that I've noticed working with residents, kind of trying to basically kind of the image that you've brought up and the city has brought up with kind of you having more going on, because I feel like historically when there's more going on in Oneonta, people's quality of life, they forget about those things in a way because they get excited to have events to go to. Money wise, it might be a more long-term plan, but I feel like with our parks and recs system, being privatized has actually hurt, in my opinion, because I grew up in the park system where we had things to do and actually had like programs to go to and be excited for. And I know that's a money thing and that's a long term, but how can we be creative and, like Scott said, find alternative nonprofits and our key stakeholders within the city to create programming. And I think some of the issues that I deal with at the college is sometimes like trying to like reserve spaces can be complicated for young people. Trying to reserve like park spaces and be, the destination of Oneonta of that events and stuff like that. So I feel like there could be more things that we can just host that are available for people to just go to, so there's not that like, you know, competition for reserving space. So it's just something that I just see. It can be sometimes complicated to do something as simple as a, you know, a basketball tournament or, you know, like a frisbee tournament, like just having those things in the park, like monthly or bi-weekly, I feel like would bring a lot of people to use our spaces. But I know it's complicated. I'm just, you know, just from the historical lens of helping people through those processes.
Yeah, and if you wanna have young families here, you really do need to have something for them to do. Yes, Don?
I think my,
Question, oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna make a comment. I think my daughter would be annoyed if I didn't mention the skate park. Need some rehab.
Yep.
How do we go about doing? I'm just still finding the phrase to say.
Right.
Sorry, Don.
Yeah, my question was about what part of the Parks and Rec was privatized? This was probably before my time.
And I could be like articulating it incorrectly, but like, for example, like Oneonta used to have like youth programs, so like there was a Kiwanis club like softball league that I was in, so like I would play softball, t-ball, like spend all the summer in Ewok Park. They had like the park program and stuff that you could go to, and there was like free reduced lunch and stuff like that. So it's complicated because of money, but these are just things, how do we create alternatives to market people to come and use the park, and not necessarily have to reserve the whole space. Like you could just do something in a small area, and if someone reserves the large pavilion or something, they still have those events. So I guess it's just being creative, working with the Boys and Girls Club, working with other stakeholders to bring things to our city spaces and figuring out like a plan that way.
Yeah, key to both Len's and Scott's, you know, first take on this is the financial viability, so it's a case of not spending money, we're committing to spend money that we don't have. Don?
We have a great pool. Actually, I think there's two of them, right? Like a wading pool and a big pool. And we could, they're sort of underutilized a little bit, but maybe we could promote that because it's, in the summer, it's really a nice pool.
I think the YMCA actually runs them. I don't think the little pool is in Portland right now. It's just
The kiddie pool is not,
yeah, it's just.
right, is it? Oh, does it?
They fixed it? Okay, okay.
Yeah, it might have been down once.
Maybe I have
Yeah.
bad information. But the YMCA does run it, so you get like a band from them, and then you're able to access the pool if you're local and city resident.
Maybe we
If
could
you don't, you
promote
can
it.
pay.
Maybe we could promote it somehow. You know, that it exists and.
The YMCA does.
Okay.
Luke?
So just, I guess, Greg, trying to get deliverable, would something like along the lines of increased usage of the parks be a deliverable?
So, I guess when I was thinking deliverable, we kind of moved ahead and it's just a matter of terms. And this has been good conversation, so there's nothing wrong with that. But when I say deliverable, I'm thinking, what is the document? Like, what are we getting at the end of the strategic planning process? That's okay. I mean, what you guys are talking about is all what we're trying to get to. But I guess as far as deliverable, that's what we're thinking. At what point do we say, okay, we've strategic planned, and now we can move into the budget process?
Okay.
I'd like to see a collaborative reference document that both staff and council can use to move forward in the same direction. Kind of end any sort of unnecessary tugging back and forth between priorities. If we align ourselves together at this time, then, you know, at least the 8 of us have, you know, 3 3/4 more years to help drive that plan forward, so. And then I can't say, you know, what the next council's gonna wanna do, but, I think that's one of the drawbacks to, you know, representative government is that, you get new people all the time and they have different ideas about what they wanna see done, so having something that is static, which, you know, I don't think that we ever do, just requires recalibration all the time. So, I think it's a good time in our term to, decide what we wanna do together and then do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thanks.
further, Scott?
I just think the strategic plan's also gotta be a little bit fluid too, because of outside environmental impacts, whether it's the economy or go through a flood or something like that, we gotta be able to adapt and change. So we can't say this is the plan and we're sticking 100% to it. I think it's a great driving force for the budgets as we go forward, but we still have to have that in the back of our head that if something comes outside of our control, like COVID, like we went through, we gotta be able to adapt and say, hey, maybe we don't do anything in the strategic plan for a year. Then let's step back and regroup and see where we're at, kinda like what we did.
I think that to your point, Scott, is very helpful, because I think that was one of the sort of driving, underlying, thoughts that I had about having sustainability be primary here in terms of our strategic plan, because these kinds of, you mentioned environmental, future pandemics aside, we're gonna see an increase in environmental, events that are going to be potentially, devastating. That is the prediction for our area. And so I think that's why sustainability should be actually foremost in one of the foundations in terms of deliverables for this.
Right.
Given that there is a lot of uncertainty when it comes to climate.
I agree.
Piggybacking on both of your comments, though, one of the threads there was the safety and security that we may need to be kind of expanding on, because there are new threats that are coming, and we need to be prepared for those. So that emergency preparedness piece may need to be a deliverable that warrants some attention.
It is, I think, part of sustainability.
Yes, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw a report potentially another really bad wildfire summer, so we could have some pretty nasty days coming forward.
It's gotta be grateful for the rain. Lynn?
Yeah.
Greg, am I missing within the strategic plan what's been related to policy 6 with campus and community relations? I'm missing it, but I'm just trying to see, because I want to make sure that we do a better job with the inclusion of our colleges. Have an opportunity to have so many young people stay. I know I recently was talking with college staff, faculty, that setting a goal of maybe 10 to retain after graduation. So I'm trying to find unemployment, because that's the first words out of their mouth. And the study groups that we're telling them is, I need a job. Then we can take care of the housing. So I'm just trying to connect those pieces to the Parker College,
That is.
because they're in the fifth ward.
That is absolutely open and up for the council to decide how does that fit in. So those 6 that we have, we had the example from Minnesota, but that's just an example. We're only on New York, so we can set whatever strategic priorities we want. So if that doesn't fit well enough into one of those, we talk about how do we change one of those or add another one or whatever it may be. So it might not be in there appropriately.
I think we should also include Job Corps, because oftentimes the Job Corps kids are looking for jobs when they finish. And they have, haven't had a ton of time necessarily in our community, they've been really good at making sure that all their needs are being met up there and that they're having really positive interactions with our city and they're wanting to stay here after achieving their goals, but we don't really have jobs or housing or ways to transition the students down here when they're wanting to stay. I've been hearing that quite a bit, the Job Corps students are wanting to stay. So,
Scott?
I'm just piggybacking Shannon a little bit here. A lot of what I hear, obviously, because everybody knows where I work, and Bryce, I'm sure you probably hear it too, is lately where I'm at, and I think, Mark, you were at the meeting where they said it too, is there's nothing to do downtown for them.
Yep.
And I think if we can engage and try to figure out what they're looking for, because it's not, a lot of them don't want to do the bar scene. They don't want to come down, that was what it was. They're looking more for, not like, well, it is entertainment, but like things to do, things to engage, things to be versus drinking, So I think if we can maybe help out some business owners that way, try to get them and feed them that information of, this is what they're looking for. You know, maybe that will help retain in.
Bryce?
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback with Lynn, Scott, and Shannon. Through at least SUNY, and Hardwick probably has the same system with federal government, realizing how we can market to business owners in the city of Oneonta that they can apply for work study, and students, if the city fills out the paperwork and sends it to their college, the students can work for that work study position as long as it's approved. Because we have a lot of students that have work study, and there's not enough jobs up on campus, which makes no sense to me. They're trying to figure it out, but that's something where when you talk about service, like, you know, I think about Habitat Humanities and like a lot of like business owners that just need like the basic helps, but might not be able to afford workers. You have a streamline of funding, and you're building that connection and networking with the students to say, hey, I worked at, you know, Nina's, or I worked at Sal's. I really like the business owner. I have like a safe space here in the community. Maybe that builds into something later where retention happens, right? You know, kind of creating that community thing. Something as simple as, you know, doing a volunteer service with the community and realizing how dirty it gets creates, oh wow, I don't wanna do that again, you know, and just, it's an educational tool, and it also makes the community members, you know, realize that, hey, there's a lot of students that have potential to do great things in Oneonta or beyond. So I feel like we're already on it, it's just like, how do we streamline that?
And it's really creating an infrastructure that will outlast, you know, all of us, that will continue to bring the two colleges into the community and make it a community of the colleges and, you know, and the rest of our residents. Yes, Luke?
One thing, I don't know, Greg, if this is necessarily in the document, but I think an annual meeting similar to this, scheduled so everybody can have it on their agendas, I think would be great. Just checking up on the, and I know you give us your team reports, but like just one meeting dedicated to the progress, the problems, the highlights, really about the strategic plan.
How you feeling about all that?
To build on that, Luke, I mean, just, you know, the way that I've seen it done and the way I could see it working here is this happens every year, this process, whether it's just one meeting or multiple meetings, and it's really it's the start of the budgeting process for next year. We're not talking about what budget items we're including and all that yet, but it's setting or recalibrating our priorities that should inform how the staff puts together that budget that then comes to the council. So when I look at the strategic plan, whatever's developed, I see it being modified at this level every year, and then throughout the year, there's just reporting by the staff, where are we, what actions are we taking, and how is that progressing, what stumbling blocks are there. You don't really change, like when you look at, I guess looking down at the next, transition to the next section, assigning responsibilities, we've got the level 1, 2, and 3, essentially, the strategic priorities are those 6 things, whether we change those or not, or add or subtract, that's still open. But then beyond that, you get down to the next level, a little bit more specific, but still not super specific, not, you know, I don't know, not a very specific thing like start a parks program, or yes, or do this or do that. That comes down at level 3, but the key strategies are where you take those strategic priorities and you distill them down into, and you know, if you were to compare them to the comprehensive plan, when you look at the blue lines on this second document, policy area 6, like if we were to come up with a strategic plan and then move forward someday with an update to the comprehensive plan, it would seem to make sense that the policy areas in the comprehensive plan match up pretty well, if not exactly, with that level 1 strategic priorities in the strategic plan. And then your orange lines, the different goals, those are kind of like, you know, at least that level of language or specificity or vagueness, depending on how you're looking at it, that's like a key strategy. And then the other lines that are not highlighted, the white lines below that are more like actions. And a comprehensive plan is going to have everything in there that everyone in the community can think of on the steering committee and with all the feedback in that moment. But the strategic plan then takes, as Stephen explained, and kind of implements that, and it's not going to be everything in one year. That's where you prioritize, and that's where things can be adjusted by the council year to year as things change, pandemics come up, or whatever new issues arise. So you're not necessarily just picking from the comprehensive plan, saying this is all that we're doing, but you're using it as a guide, and then you're deciding, you know, what are the strategies. And by the time you get down to level 3, that's where, you know, staff is going to have to heavily input, how are we doing this? And it's a back and forth throughout the process, is how I see it. But I'm here to kind of try to facilitate the conversation, and I want to hear from council if this makes any sense, or if you have other thoughts, how we should go about it. Scott?
I guess got two things. Didn't a couple of meetings ago, I don't remember what we were calling it, the list of 5 or whatever, we started going over from like another city.
That's what we're calling the strategic priorities. There were 6 of them. The council talked about the ones that we had as an example, and sort of those seem appropriate to us, but I think there probably needs to be more conversation about them.
Is that, well, finish up, is this gonna be transferred over into that?
So the way I see that, all those objectives, like the highlighted things, they're basically, when I compare language, they're the level 3 actions, or at least examples of them. So eventually, when we get down to that level, that's that level. That's the details, like what are we doing? We're purchasing this fire truck, we're hiring additional staff, or we're implementing this program, you know, very specific, measurable, SMART goals, that kind of thing. So that's not wasted effort there.
Is that what I'm hearing? Like, we don't have level 1 yet, we haven't solidified the top 5 or 6 that we want? Is that-
That's up to you to decide. Have you? Do you know what they are? They're listed as we go down through the agenda. We could talk about them.
Do we have, yes, Cecilia?
I don't want to interrupt. I just was going to say, didn't we agree that there were several that we had
Yes, that of
kind of confirmed
Wisconsin, I think
in our
it was.
last
So,
discussion?
yeah, so as we,
So that's on here.
if you look down at the bottom of the first page and then continue on the second page, you see number 1, number 2, number 3. You've got financial strength and operational excellence as the first one. So those are the ones we took from the example,
Okay,
and we didn't change them.
right.
Oneana may be different, there may be a different way you wanna, you know, like Glenn mentioned, campus community connections, how do you work that in? Maybe that can be worked in within those in the next level, or maybe there needs to be a different category, so.
Turns out it was right there. So given that, our next step in your mind's eye, Greg?
Okay,
in
so
terms of conversation.
if we were on the assigning responsibilities section, and I just did it, but I didn't intend to give you the answers, because there's not a right answer, but like I said, how I guess I would see this going, but who is responsible for determining the strategic priorities, level 1? That's a question, not a rhetorical one. Who is responsible for identifying level 1 strategic priorities in your minds?
In my mind, it's gotta be a collective effort.
I can't imagine anybody would argue with that. Right, it's the council.
Okay. So, same question. Who is responsible at level 2, the key strategies? A little bit more specific, not the most specific.
You need key strategies, I guess.
I feel like you're giving me a test and I didn't say.
Don't worry, there's no wrong answers.
What does it mean? Can you be a little bit more? Let's pretend like I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
And let's say the strategic priorities that we are developing, you were talking about the things that we were just discussing that are listed here. That level 1 would be up to us, that's what we're agreeing to. What would level 2 key strategies look like?
So level 2 is, and we don't have the example from another municipality, but to use it kind of an example, if you look at the orange lines in our comprehensive plan, those are, I don't know, pick a page on page 149. We're looking at the campus thing. So campus and community relations, goal number 1, continue to improve relationship between the city of Oneonta and local higher education institutions. that is not so specific that you can measure it and track it and say, okay, we're done. You know, it's more of like, it's a mid-level strategy, and then as you go below that, the white unhighlighted lines, they're a little bit more specific. So I'm not saying we have to take the orange, you know, literally, and copy over here, but that's the type of thing that I see being the level 2. Yeah, Luke.
That would be the key strategy.
So I would definitely say, Greg, council as well as
Yeah.
city administrator and department head. I see the key strategies as really the kind of the crossroad between the nitty gritty, so to speak, and the big picture. So I think there's definitely need for even the collaboration on part of council working together, but also the council as a body working with yourself, department heads, because that's where we kind of talk about the big idea and kind of how we can make that big idea a reality, and then the nitty gritty is the measurables of those
Yeah.
steps.
Makes sense to
I
me.
would agree that key strategies is gonna be city staff along with the council.
I would also add relevant stakeholders, like, if we're gonna improve campus and community relations, I think it's reasonable to say, we want to continue to improve the relationship between the city and local higher education institutions, like, here are our ideas, what are your ideas, how can we do this? So, I would add relevant stakeholders.
Yeah, and a lot of those are defined in the comprehensive plan, so that might help inform who those are.
Cool.
But yeah.
So we've got the council, the city administrator, department heads, and stakeholders are those that are be driving the key strategies. Is that
I think so.
work
I mean,
for
do you want to talk about who the stakeholders are now? I mean, you can do
Not
that.
specifically,
Not
I think, my,
The colleges were a good example.
Yeah.
yeah, right,
What's that?
yeah,
It would depend on the context for
Yeah.
stakeholders.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think once we define them,
I
it
mean-
would make more sense to identify who they are.
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
I think we made some progress there. Do you want to move on to actions, or?
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, then, who do you see, who is responsible for the actions, the specific things?
City
Yeah,
staff,
There's their expertise.
administrator staff, that's,
And I was thinking also perhaps potentially members of the public.
Relevant, kind of.
Are they relevant stakeholders? Of course.
Well, I mean,
So I guess let me rephrase the question.
yeah,
I was thinking volunteer efforts that the city perhaps provides to the public.
is it, are you asking who carries out the actions or who is responsible for determining what the actions will be?
The latter.
Or even who.
So
Oh,
who
okay.
determines what the actions are?
Oh,
So if we have a
okay.
strategy
I thought
that
would be-
is,
That would be level two.
oh, I
Can-
thought those
I misread that as well.
It's not
Sorry,
the
yeah.
articulation of
Yeah.
the actions. You're still talking about the formulation of these actions.
right, so if we say we have a strategy to
Right.
increase communications and public engagement opportunities, then who comes up with and proposes how we're going to do that? Obviously, everything eventually is approved by council when there's expenditures and all the things that we do, but who comes up with the specific actions?
Just one council member's input, but I definitely think the staff would be leading, as the experts in their fields would be leading. Of course, it comes to council.
Comes back to council.
But those suggestions, those actions of, that can be financial, it could be engineering, it could be police, fire, definitely the experts should be coming up with those, I would say.
So,
I have a question.
Yes.
So I don't disagree. I think I have a question, which is, what if someone has an idea, and this has happened, right? One council member has an idea about something, or a couple council members. How do we, maybe this is delving into our next topic of communication, but what's the appropriate way, if it isn't a shared responsibility, and I do agree that staff should absolutely take the lead, but if we don't define it as a shared responsibility, how does one, with a reasonable buy-in to the strategic plan, suggest something to have it fleshed out, vetted, to see if it's reasonable? Like, what is the respectful way to do that if it's someone else's responsibility? Is that a question that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that
Okay.
makes sense. We can talk about that. I don't know that it's ever inappropriate for someone to suggest an idea or ask questions and that sort of thing. I think part of the idea with a strategic plan, in one respect, you know, by looking at this level, these key strategies, and keeping it at that level on a once per year basis or whatever, is you you set these and then you're able to go do them and not get, go off in different directions that you weren't anticipating going. So it might be something like that where, someone brings up a new idea or something we want to look into. It's like, okay, let's put that over here on this list of, let's look into this. And I don't know, unless it's an emergency or like an urgent type of, we got to change now. But maybe it's something you put aside and you look at later and figure out how does this work into things. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Not
Thinking out
really,
loud.
but it's
Yeah.
okay.
And think
Yeah,
that-
because that could be informed too by some event or some happenstance in the news that we
Right.
aren't, anticipating and that we
Right.
have to be reactive to.
Right, like
And-
Scott was saying, there needs to be flexibility
Yeah.
with regard to that.
I would think that, there would be regular, probably like quarterly reporting of status updates, how, where are we with these actions from the staff or from, led by me and the department heads. And then at that time, there's an interaction with the council, where are we at, okay? And then I think the council should look through the focus of, well, we've got these strategies we told you to work on, and then you guys told us what these actions are and you're working on them. Maybe there's something that's still missing, and at that time you can talk about, well, we're not quite moving in the right direction with respect to this strategy that we adopted.
Yeah.
Can we talk about other ways to do that? And, oh, by the way, I have an idea, and then we talk about that.
Yeah.
So I think like these actions, they can change
I think what I'm
more
looking
frequently.
for, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in,
No,
I'm
you're
just
fine.
like an eager talker,
Go ahead.
and I'm trying to work on that. I think what I'm looking for is, and you just kind of said it, is like kind of an institutionalized discussion of these things where, it's not just like, here's what we've been doing with, I'm city staff member now, here's what we've been doing, we've been putting all this effort into it, and, we're bringing it to council, and this is the first time council is having an opportunity to have input on it or discuss it, and we don't agree. And then that feels like shooting down a lot of effort, where if there's something where there's an appropriate, the conversation can be had earlier in a way that we're all, again, sort of moving forward. I think I got off the rails a little bit, but I just mean, I don't want someone to put out all this effort into actions that maybe we don't know about from the jump, and then we're like, nah, we don't think that's good. And, that's within our purview, that's within our right to say, like, no, we don't agree with that. But if it can be more collaborative and less of an assessment, I think that would be a better, more successful strategy for collaboration going forward.
Yeah,
So along those lines, then, Katie, under level 3,
Yeah.
figuring your actions, then is that a collaborative effort with the council and the city staff again? Meaning we're moving this along together, having discussion. Well, this is the idea, but this is what are our obstacles on to get that idea flushed out, to
Yeah.
make it a reality.
I mean, in my opinion, I think with respect to, the fact that we have hired people who are experts in their field, I think the more that we can discuss things prior to moving forward on any decisions, the less likely we are to hit a situation where, anybody is misinformed or there's miscommunication or, I just think the more collaboration, the better, without, obviously I know there's a lot of fear of micromanaging, which I understand. I think if there's respectful conversation, it can be more about setting a shared goal than micromanaging. But I think, the more early collaboration, the more likely something is to be successful. That's my hot take. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know if we got I just talked there, I don't know if we got a
Well, I can
consensus
feed
is the
off-
word
well,
of
I
the
can-
day. Yes,
I'll feed
please.
off you, sorry, my brain was processing.
That's okay.
I personally agree. I do like when we have the council meetings like this, where it's a lot of topics are planning, and it feels like that you get a lot more information, compared to when we have things on the discussion agenda, we get the information on Wednesday, and then meet on Tuesday. It's really hard to get data from your residents unless they're really passionate in that time frame. So you feel like you're really making a decision individually, and I don't think that's fair for residents, for a lot of decisions. I know that's complicated, we have a lot of things to approve, but kind of identifying counts, together as a team of like, what are things in the consent agenda that are just like, you know, needs to get approved fast, and then what are some of the hot topics, like, you know, working with Greg to like, okay, if you feel like it's gonna be a hot topic thing, like maybe we're able to meet, like, you know, just talk more about it, get more information. Cause I agree, sometimes I feel like it's like an assessment, like, I didn't give an example tonight, like the reason why I abstained, like I didn't expect that, and I didn't feel comfortable answering, because it just felt like I'm not an expert on that. You know what I mean? So just little things like that, just like how do you,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I think you were absent at that
you can do
meeting.
the research and look up strategies and have formulated opinion, but if we're for the people, like I like the way we're setting up some of these council meetings.
So, shared goals, early collaboration, anything more that we wanna conversate around this, or where do you wanna go?
This level,
Yes,
Mayor, I'm just, so level 3 was city staff and council?
yes,
is that-
city staff and council.
Like, led by city staff in collaboration, in
Right.
collaboration with council.
Relevant stakeholders are not part of the action.
I think that's a good question.
Determining what the actions are or
Yeah.
implementing the actions.
Yeah,
Both.
well,
Okay, so I guess, can you give me maybe an example or think of
Well,
something,
I think we
how
have
that would
examples.
work? So a relevant stakeholder that's not a council member or staff member would come forth and say that the city is going to
We should.
Right.
do this?
Saying this could be an action.
I think not to. I think these are actions that are going to be done. We are doing these. Like we're at that point.
Right, right.
I think the stakeholder is definitely
For
comprehensive plan
Okay.
and also getting feedback all throughout. We want to be able to collect information, see how we're doing, but I don't think they determine what the actions are. But like you said, they might suggest something. They might say we should do this,
Yeah.
but I don't know that that goes directly to level
Yeah.
3. That might come in and.
Yeah.
But we can talk about how that actually, what the workflow is there. How do you know, that's another part of what I think Mayor's talking about communications. How do we get information from the
Yes.
public
Right.
and use it?
And I wonder too about boards
And go
and,
back again with it and
Right.
say, this is what we've chosen to do.
Sure.
Right.
That whole dynamic.
Yeah.
right, but proposals that come to boards, from boards and commissions specifically to the council would be another way, and those are the stakeholders generally,
Yes, that's
and there
right.
are any number of,
Or
an increasing number of
task
task
force.
forces, correct?
That's a really
Who,
good.
who would wanna be bringing their proposals
yeah.
to the,
Yeah.
appropriate body.
That's a really good point, Matt,
Mhm.
because, you know, we have arguably the most important advisory commission is the Housing Commission, and they have put forward a couple of things, and we have had to, for whatever reason, say like, okay, that's very good information, thank you so much. And I think that I wanna talk about this, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, because I think that that's one of those things where it's like, oh, here's a wrench. Now what are you gonna do with that wrench? Like, if we have a strategic plan and advancing housing is on it, then we should be finding a way to implement those things, but if it's not already on the strategic plan, then where do we fit it in? And I think that that's where a lot of the disconnect between like boards and commissions as advisory and what actually gets done is happening. And so, Mark, I commend you. I think you've really done a great job of engaging people. And there may be a frustration that, you know, you go to meetings and you do the things, and without the autonomy to do those things yourself, how do you get the city to actually do them?
So can I just add to
Yeah.
that comment?
Yeah.
So, and I talked to Housing Commission about this. They brought recommendations to the common council.
Uh-huh.
We passed an exterior property maintenance code based on the recommendations from the Housing Commission. So that was not only brought by the commission,
Uh-huh.
I drafted an ordinance, the council passed it.
Yeah.
We drafted an accessory dwelling unit ordinance for the entire city. We added accessory dwelling units downtown and to the U zone. We did those specific code updates based on recommendations from the Housing Commission.
Okay.
So we are actually think that sometimes when we look at boards and commissions, we kind of get lost in some of the pieces of what they're recommending end up in other pieces of legislation. So we didn't pass a housing commission specific ordinance. We passed ordinances based on things that they were recommending to us.
Okay,
So I wanted to, because the housing commission had that same frustration.
yeah, yes.
So we have actually taken what they've brought to us and we've
Okay.
actually moved it forward through council.
I think
which
that
is
the,
a win.
yes, thank you for acknowledging that. I think that the question, though, of a secondary group of people making suggestions becoming kind of a chaos agent still stands. And we have been able to do it with the Housing Commission. I appreciate you putting that forward. And that is a commission that specifically, has said, like, here's what you need to do. And we've been able to do, like you said, pieces of it, but not, the whole thing. But I think it happens with many boards and commissions. So I think the question still stands.
So even with the committee, even with the Community Wellness Committee, as you're
Right.
starting to identify something that, requires some action, we want to make sure that somehow it winds up tethered to the strategic plan by kind of anticipating it in some fashion.
Yeah, some sort of someday implementation,
Right.
So I
strategy.
see, again, like there being probably makes sense to me, a quarterly meeting like this, or part of a meeting like this, maybe not a separate meeting, but part of the regular meeting, where there's an update and discussion about things like that. So where are we at with the actions that we had previously identified? What new actions are we adding to our strategic plan? And
Okay.
that might be something where, so the environmental board
Totally.
comes forward with,
Yes,
like,
the
well, let's
environmental
implement
board is a good
something
one.
that isn't already on the plan,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an action level, like, requires staff effort and, implementation effort, rather than, as soon as that comes forward, diverting resources from already
Right.
established priorities and actions. Let's put it on the back burner, not forever, but until the next quarterly review, and say, okay,
Right.
now, does this fit in? Where can we fit this in? Or is it still something, for the future? Or is it something we alter our priorities and something else is coming off the list to put this on, or whatever it might be? That way we're not just reacting in the moment. You react in the moment for emergencies.
Yes.
Not for everything else.
Everyone's ideas about everything. Yes, no, I think that was great. Thank you.
But
Make a suggestion just in the format of our meeting tonight, before we move into strategic plan and development. Would it not do us all well to get up and stretch our legs for maybe 5-10 minutes?
I would love to do that.
Yes. Thank you, Lynn.
All in favor?
You're the man.
sure, so let's,
Okay, I'm gonna reset.
Oh my goodness. Thank
So,
you.
didn't you say that?
You were like tweaking a little bit. I like yours too.
Didn't it, wasn't it said that these were developed?
I think,
So, for example, take a couple of, just at random, I was looking at sentences. I read this whole thing on the design guidelines ensure that new development occurs within the city's appropriate scale and style. Imagine any member.
yeah. Where do you anticipate this going from here?
something,
Because I didn't see it being something that it was gonna take
No.
much
That's
longer
it.
than where we were. But maybe I'm wrong.
Nobody writes.
We're just getting to what the portion of it that I thought would take the longest, which is actually talking about what are our
parts of it.
No,
I've already kind of gotten there with some of the things, but yeah,
you know,
we're just getting there.
they're all our good behavior right now. I just kind of like hate to push it.
I'd say ride it. I'd say ride the wave. If there's the wave. Go ahead and start.
No, I wouldn't be here if that, yeah.
This is the first time that it's ever. It's the first time it's ever.
I need to probably stretch my legs.
Yeah.
See that crack? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And congratulations to her, doctor.
Yes, yes.
If you're listening, congratulations.
Yeah, no, it's, no, I agree with that, it's just, I would argue that if we didn't have the conversation along with that stuff, most of them would be like, go to Taco Bell.
Don't envy the journey, the very happy.
Yeah, sure. It's great.
A little more time, maybe.
What's that?
A little more time back.
Yes. Yep. Good.
But if we were like if you were to go to the public and be like, let's go to the drive-through downtown, like slowly, like if the council passed that, I would. We don't, because codes are, you know. Yeah, so it's pretty great. Yeah, well, and she said there was
Some of it was, because I was going around the room. Everybody had their reactions. John, so I'm gonna give you, Karen Windrow's email address. She's kind of coordinating this event over at D Street for the 29th. I don't have the power to, you were asking, but I'll connect you with her, and then, you can loop me into it, or however. Does that work? Yes. Good. Huh? I'm fine. When you're mayor. I think I'm gonna do what they euphemistically stretching my legs.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm from St. Louis, I lived in Washington DC, and I moved to so.
storage things inside.
Yeah.
It's they have like lockers in there.
How big would you say?
What's that?
How big would you say? Really?
I've got stuff in there, but
So what's in there right now? What's in there right now?
my junk.
Oh, just your junk?
Right, but there's probably 100 lockers in the paper, but there's enough room.
Wow.
If you have 8 or whatever it's called.
That's
6
good.
or 8, whatever it was.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And it's not far from where they be, just walk over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like 200 feet.
Hey, Bryce,
It's down a
so
flight
I
of
had
stairs.
I
two
contacted,
college students come through my business.
Burlington, Vermont today. Of course, they're very close to the Canadian border. They've been using the same ones for
One was an
Excuse me,
internship
for
at first,
15 years.
and then the second one I heard them come through.
They go in the back and take them in.
Yeah, that was understandable.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same company, but yeah, it's the same concept. It's just that, you know, they have two handles so that two people can just pull them over. Or one strong person or whatever. I don't know that they're that heavy. Huh?
He said, I'm not that
I don't know,
strong.
you and me neither, but, yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah. There's a padlock on the door, it's a gate, it's like a gate. And,
Yeah, no, we stayed a while.
key to the, didn't get into the basement, this key.
Last night, they didn't like it. Yeah, so I do that every year too. We actually get insurance from that.
I like it. That would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, because otherwise,
It's money.
well,
Because you're looking at having to figure something out that's gonna cost you money somehow, some way.
yeah.
9 times out of 10.
So I was just, maybe a terrible sense of humor, I was just poking Steve, he's saying,
Yeah, no, the kids literally came through like,
this job
I
is
see
ready.
like
And I'm saying,
2 videos on
average citizens writing this stuff, it's very technical language. I would
because
have
I, he's a jock.
I think it all goes into the meat grinder,
well, it's clear.
or is it the sausage making?
This is so extra. This is
Yeah.
how about that?
Yeah, I go with that.
So is this your personal?
No, they wouldn't trust me with a hammer. I have barely used it. That might change. Huh?
They have places that
Yeah, yeah.
I got one for Dan. Never lost his job. Again, forgive me for my sense of humor.
Yeah, or lack of same, yeah.
It's like poking people.
So you can
He never got to use himself.
I mean, so like, we came and did an inspection, right? So he's just like,
You get much more.
yeah, and we,
I don't know, another half hour, 45 minutes.
I don't know what you need to do, because if I tell you something wrong,
Okay, so that's enough.
yeah, like we aren't allowed to.
It has to be official. Cause just when I'm trying to like piece it all back now and get there. But I know that things obviously have changed since I had, like all the before. It's not like, I know we had it was because they were using it for stuff, it's not crazy or something. But, I got solid.
Yeah, I mean, like, we just.
There's some things that are replacing it, so I think I'll get those first. And then
Yeah, the problem we're running into is like, because we're certified. I can't tell you I'm not allowed to like review. I can be like, that's a code violation, that's a code violation, that's a code violation, have someone fix it.
How was the clock? Like, like two.
Well, I mean, we get 30-day notices.
Oh,
Felt good though, right?
that's scary.
Yeah, I mean, so like, yeah, I mean,
Well, I went in to check my box, and Cecilia had never been in there. So I showed her where that was, and then I saw that Luke had a bunch of them.
no, I mean, you would want to, I held my car.
So I'm like trying to help out. It was
I already filed
the league
the list to be on the list.
with like the Binghamton
Or literally your figure? It's like $500.
teams that I want
They need to
to
decide us for. I tried it.
just in the same division.
Um,
So it gets a little. It's their thing.
Yeah.
And like Oneana's thing is usually baseball, basketball, well, soccer number one. Baseball, and then a little bit of basketball, track and field,
I'll do the biggest of them.
volleyball girls, absolutely. So it,
I want to get it together.
you know, it just that's.
Yeah.
But
It's like our thing.
person, 'cause I was, me and my brother were the last teams to make it like centuries ago.
A good audio system and a good video system.
So I know I have this.
And Greg, so, well, I mean, Greg is working now, right?
I was asked.
Of course, you know, we had the duck on top of this for the longest time, and
I still check.
and you wouldn't know. But, you know, some people. Greg tends to sit back.
So yeah,
I'll talk to you after, but I heard maybe something.
We can't get, well, I mean, we talked.
I didn't know if you could probably.
Yes, well, it's
But we presume that
Oh,
they
it's, oh, yeah, it's
as almost gonna be surplus pretty soon.
Look at you, okay.
It's always decaf.
Relatively.
But you know, it's hard to miss
I thought you were like,
I was ready to roll. I ate it, I thought this one. I ate it. This is making.
We saw it here.
No, I'm vegan. We were just
Yeah, wondering if they haven't missed it, and you wonder.
Have you had the sucre?
Huh?
Have you had the sucre, the vegan ice
They
cream?
can actually
Oh,
afford to
the oatmeal one?
might be able to.
It's a local thing. I've never had it.
And then maybe
I
get
have not
access
had
to
it,
the
but
ice
Holy
cream.
Guernsey has some vegan ice cream.
Cause I do, so they're talking over there, there's some
Like an
petitioners
oatmeal
talking.
vanilla. She had pumpkin, fall, like she's really good about it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, you're coming back. Hear ye, hear ye.
Who are we missing, anybody?
No, we're all here.
Okay, shall we continue on?
Good to go. Okay. The next section that we haven't done yet: strategic plan development, strategic priorities and key strategies. So, I've listed the 6 priorities that we had talked about last time, and we can still talk about what those are. And then, you know, as a guideline and just kind of using the example we had looked at, there were really probably shouldn't be more than 6 or 7 key strategies beneath each strategic priority. Otherwise, it gets unwieldy, and you're really not being very strategic anymore.
these are
More
levels.
comprehensive, to use a word. So
these are level 2,
these are
1
levels.
through 7.
Yes,
Okay.
1 through 7s are the level 2s under that particular strategic priority. So I guess let's just jump into it. Financial strength and operational excellence. Is that still something that makes sense as a strategic priority for the city?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, one question is maybe not for tonight, but it might be something to think about, is do we want to define what that means to us? You know, in like a paragraph or something.
Well, I think the community wellness committee has offered something along the lines of statement for the city. This might have been back in December.
Yeah, we did. That was about basically like the presence of community wellness in strategic planning and
Yeah.
budgeting.
Yeah.
So that would, yeah, it's kind of a mission statement for that committee.
Yep.
But as far as like the overall financial strength and operational excellence, you're looking for something like that.
Oh, I
But-
myself the state health committee, so.
Oh,
I'm
gotcha.
Or Central State.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of, yeah,
The idea
that's,
of
I think
what
that's the
we're
idea.
going
And I'm not saying we need to wordsmith or think about things tonight, but it might be something that you know, you want to define what that means generally.
I would like a little bit more time to think about that.
Yeah.
And I apologize that I missed the meeting where you guys had locked in on the 6 titles.
I'm not sure that we're fully locked in on this.
definitely not locked in. I don't,
Alright.
I mean,
don't
it's up to the
agree
council.
that we're locked
Again, I
in.
wanna come back to, I've heard Cecilia bring it up several times, and I'm in total agreement about economic development and the long game of where we're headed. I'd like to see that included somewhere in here. And half of our population, after we look at the 2020 plan, is colleges. And so I would like the colleges to be included as one of our strategic priorities.
Yes, I agree.
Well,
No, I think it needs to be
represent
strategic.
50% of our population.
No, I'm just trying to hear what you're saying. I just don't know what that means.
So,
Like it's down to like,
I guess my question is, does
So-
community inclusiveness
It's-
means everybody, right? Or
I think we could make it broad, but, yeah.
Campus and community relations? Is this what we're talking about?
It's on the comprehensive plan policies, but it's not in this strategic plan as one of the
So-
6.
The suggestion is we would add a strategic priority that would include some mention of the college and university.
that's what I was saying.
Right, and Scott's question is community inclusiveness broad enough that we could include prioritization of the relationship with the colleges there, or should it be its own separate? Which I have opinion on, to no one's surprise.
you read my mind, thank you.
I think that, I mean, just as someone who lives in a ward that is more than 50% college students, I think it merits its own strategic priority, because that is literally make or break to my neighborhood and, the quality of life of its residents. So I would like to see it.
Well, I think we found out through COVID that without the college kids here, it's make or break for the city.
Mhm.
So I think it's time that we actually put the college kids in the forefront and actually figure out what it takes to recruit them to be here for the 4 years and then to retain them for years after that.
Make
Could
them
you-
feel like part of our community while they're here.
Correct.
Right.
But
Could-
exactly, we need to include them while they're here for those 4 years. They don't feel inclusion right
No,
now.
Yes.
definitely not.
And you could add to that too, staff and faculty are not necessarily as
Right.
integrated into the community as they might be. Go ahead.
Right.
Just related, I would say that, a arm or a pathway for economic development would be more inclusiveness of the university, the colleges and universities that are here. So really partnering with them more directly.
So maybe it's not a list, maybe it's a Venn diagram,
It's a overlap.
some sort of
a
circle, yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
And we're here.
Yeah.
So we're
I
looking,
think the
we're
key
looking
is
at
really-
economic development, that long plan of economic development, then the prioritization of partnership with the colleges and, Don?
I was wondering, are there specific services that we should be providing that we aren't now with the college students?
I think that's a good question for the stakeholders.
I didn't hear you.
I think that's a good question for the stakeholders.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is, for example, I found like one little, like, I'll give one example of something that we can work as, with this, as a team. So, I didn't realize, I'd met with, Cassandra Miller, almost all of us did. I brought, my former student, who's actually a student activities employee now, and actually stayed in Oneonta after graduation and, works here, and brought him to that meeting to kind of highlight how can we work with the student activities director directly with the city and kind of just streamline, some of the events that are happening at, Hartwick or SUNY Oneonta to some of our city areas, because every campus only has so much space. There are a lot of times where reservations are full, so a student group doesn't have the space because it's full, but they don't really want to go through the city of Oneonta process. It's not really like, it's lengthy, it's time. And I'm not saying it from me, I'm saying it from the student perspective. They're young, so when they're developing organizing these things, they go on the website and like, oh, I gotta fill out this thing and I gotta pay this. I work with first generation low income students, then I gotta pay $100 fee or a $60 fee for something. So it's something that I know that we need money, but it's little things you have to work in the middle, and have some, you know, flexibility, with those things. So that's just kind of one of many examples.
What kind of facilities would they wanna use? Or what's an
So,
example?
for example, right now, SUNY Oneonta, the Hunt ballroom is actually being renovated. It's almost done, but for 2 years, it couldn't be used. So a lot of students were trying to use like the field house and other facilities, but athletics had it reserved. So they were just doing an event they could have done on a Saturday, they were waiting a whole month to do. So it's like with the city, like if we have space that's available and it's streamlined, like that could be used. Yeah, obviously, you might have to still pay a fee or something, but those clubs have money to pay it. It's just more of the process that sometimes with college groups, you might have to be a little bit more flexible. But I know that might not be fair, but it at least I'm at least bringing up the conversation.
So,
Kitty?
so a key strategy might be cross-promoting student events and city events. I know we talked about this in community wellness a little bit. You were saying that like a lot of things happen on campus that kind of stay within the campus community and, you know, and vice versa. And then I'm just trying to flesh out like the strategic planning process. So that could be like a key strategy, right? And then the actions could be things that would probably be department led, like, can we make our permitting process easier in some way? Or what does that look like? Can we get input on what that looks like and figure out what the pain points are and remove them? Can we establish some sort of, I don't wanna say grant program because that's like a loaded word, but something where you can, you know, apply in an easy way to have your fee waived for some reason, you know, we can define what that is. Or can we work with SUNY to identify like a fund that could be self-sustaining, that could be tapped into by people who wanna have, you know, community events. So those would be like more like action level. But the key strategy would be getting more events that are campus community off campus and into the community and vice versa, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
The question I have is like, what kind of facilities do we have? Would it be the Armory, for example, something like that? Or would it be, what kind of facilities?
We'd
would
have
they
to
need?
identify, it's only because that's where we miss out on college students. When you reserve a space, and it might be similar, Scott Hartwick, when you reserve a space, it's with your financial aid, you do not have to pay for that space. You're entitled to it because of the student fees. So I think about the new academic centers in Bog.
Interesting.
How can we get creative when we see empty weekends and some of our key event spaces? How could we get creative where it's like, oh, you know, student group, you can use this space like as with your college, you know, with the college, but you can make an agreement on getting some funding to go to the city. It's like kind of like we still get paid, but it could be through the college.
Yeah.
That process in exchange. You
That's
know,
a
I
great
won't get
idea.
nitty-gritty, but
Yeah.
these are just the things that are happening, and like I said, that's a key population percentage. These are the conversations that can be, you know.
I think there's an appetite for that on the campuses too, Scott.
So I go look and make sure the police chief doesn't throw something at me here in a minute, but going back to like the Old Fest, when they used to have it down in the park, back when they had that, I think the group was Panic at the Disco, was attended by, I mean, there was people coming from all over.
Was it Panic at the Disco?
Is that the name of the group, I think?
I don't remember them
There was
being
a
here,
ton
but
of
that's
people
alright.
that came, 'cause I never
That's
heard of the
awesome. They
group, I
did?
just couldn't tell you that, but.
They have some pretty big names.
But like, you know, they've had some names that draw a lot of things and, you know, they were attended by,
That's
Crazy.
I
by
think
just
that's
not
the
just
name
our
of the
residents,
system,
but
actually.
you know, but you have that engagement. I'm not saying Old Fest bring that back down.
No.
What I'm saying
Yeah.
is just, if we get maybe something like that where we can engage to get stuff back down here.
Earth Day is an example, just of,
Yeah.
a much more positive,
Yep.
event that sort of runs a little counter to OFest, but the same idea.
Shannon?
So Human Rights Commission had aligned with, some of the groups on campus, and we had been offering the armory. It was being utilized a little bit to have some fairs, and, we had like, vendors set up to sell like foods and such. But eventually it kind of like people weren't really coming to the armory. The armory's not like a hot spot. So it kind of, backed off. And like something else I just wanted to mention that we used, I think Suco has, I don't know what it's called exactly, but it's like their event calendar, and we would put our events on their calendar so that the students would get notified. So that's something I'm sure the city could do too, is putting our events on their event calendar.
And there's for what it's worth, there's conversation with both colleges at the highest level right now to incorporate both campuses' events and the community's events into one calendar. Yeah. So,
That was, I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
That would be huge.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's. Go ahead. Glenn.
So I'm just looking at the six, if we want to stay within the six, I just want to kind of throw out an idea. For me, I look at number 5, strategic priority number 5, infrastructure and asset management could fall under financial strength and operational excellence, which is strategic priority number 1. They seem to me to be very linked together. And I'm wondering if maybe we could create, staying within our comprehensive plan, put in campus and community relations and strategic priority number 5. Really kind of build that out.
So you're saying put it in both places?
I'm saying move infrastructure and asset management as a subcategory of strategic priority number 1.
I see.
Does fall, having asset management falls under your financial strength and operational
Oh, yeah.
excellence.
Then, when you're done, beat off with something, it's just an idea for council, but, kind of going off the economic development piece, like the campus, that priority. Thing came to my head thinking about kind of a seasonal economic development plan of like, for example, when our colleges are in session, fall, spring semester, that's huge, that's easy. But also identifying like when it is the summertime and we have those gaps, where a lot of students leave. I know we're talking about it, but like, so in the summer, it's like who becomes the key economic development focus, residents in All-Star Village or tourists. And then I feel like there's always a dead spot in like the winter, like the holiday season. So how do we make like a holiday seasonal development plan where it's like students are on that 1 month winter break? How do we, create programming to kind of create the same energy during that time so that there's not that many gaps? Because that's the only thing I see with the city. It's like it depends on the timing with the gaps, is where economic development goes down if we don't have, our main program. So I don't know how that fits.
Well, I think that might just sit by itself, seasonal planning for, those things that'll spur economic vitality in that moment.
Just sitting here listening, I think right now we could actually have an opportunity because I see 3 separate places fighting for the same thing, and actually probably more, is city wants to bring people here. 2 colleges are trying to bring people here, so we're working on the same front of trying to get people here. We already know the colleges are gearing up for the decreased population, and we're all, because it's a saturated thing right now. And I think that's an opportunity. We all know, I think it was, when I was talking about COVID and how much the college brought in. Ginny gives us our sales tax off of, like Amazon and stuff, all those packages that they order that come in offline, which is a substantial amount of money. So, So I see an opportunity here where I think we could have that sooner than later, get that going to try to get, because we're trying to draw that.
So city, campus, and recruitment and retention.
Attention, yeah.
So that's why I'm really suggesting that one of our strategic priorities should be matched in line with the comprehensive plan of campus and community relations.
Yeah, I agree, I think we need
And
to
I
start
was just
sooner.
suggesting, scratching or moving infrastructure and asset management under financial strength and operational excellence. Because to me, to have financial strength and operational excellence, you need to understand what your assets are and how your infrastructure is.
And I think like we had an opportunity, because I think SUNY probably has the same thing as a marketing person, where we can maybe tie in, instead of going out and getting a different resource, we can try to do all the marketing together. Again, I'm not an attorney, there might be something against doing that, but if we can start doing public-private that way, to try to, I think that's something we can start sooner than later. I mean,
Yeah, I think we've started it some. I would add, though, the healthcare infrastructure, you almost can't really separate them more and more now, especially as the college is becoming a feeder program. And they have a recruitment and retention issue that is equal to ours in the colleges.
yeah, I mean, like, each college has their own health center. Maybe that's something we could, maybe, I don't know what board or commission might even be able to look at that as a health and wellness, maybe about approaching it. See if there's something we can do between the two for being the health out in the community, because,
There's a wait, I'm sorry, did I miss, are you asking for like support from the college centers to the community?
yeah, I think there's something that we can work there. Each college has a health center.
Right.
And maybe there's something there with the way that, healthcare's been going, and, we have people with long waits or something like that, maybe like a well now, because we know they don't take Blue Cross Blue Shield right
Yeah,
now,
so
or
we
something
have a
like that.
local clinic actually. Oneonta has a clinic for people who are not insured or, can't get care elsewhere. There is one locally. So is that what you're saying?
We'll get something like that, but it's also hard for them to get health staff too, so maybe if it's, inclusive thing where we can all work together.
I'm sure they can.
I'm sure there's people smarter than I am who can make that happen. And that goes kind of along with what Chief Knapp was bringing up forward to us about that difference in EMS that they wanted to do. Was it community-based healthcare, I think they called it, or something like that.
Community paramedicine?
Yes.
I'm wondering about, when we're talking about financial strength and operational excellence. So the financial strength is obviously aided and abetted by sales tax and more consumerism just generally. And if there's anything that we need to do in terms of prioritizing ease of access of business to a successful connection as startup or as expansion beyond. Of course, obviously Judy's got all kinds of grants and micro enterprise, et cetera, et cetera. But just generally speaking, if we're looking at something that, looking at things that we're already doing, but also saying that those are important and maybe even potentially, something that might be expandable. Yes.
I just want to ask a
So in
question
terms of bringing business in,
Yes, for investment.
right, so landlords charge what they charge.
Right.
There's not much we as a city can do about what a landlord wants to charge. I'm not proposing answers. I'm suggesting that maybe that's an area that we need to take a look at. How can we make the potential new business or the entrepreneur who's looking at expanding or starting a business or moving a business more likely to be able to do that successfully in the city of Oneonta?
Right, so should that be more of a conversation on your economic development?
Well, I'm looking at financial strength, and that does drive
That's true, but I think they're different.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, no,
In my
again, I'm
opinion.
looking at, sales tax and all the other, values of bringing in business. I'm not certain if it presents itself in another,
Well, I think maybe we should add one.
So this is addition to the grants we currently already give to businesses?
yeah, I'm not suggesting that I know of grants or, how we might be able to expand that, or how we might be able to make, the connection to would-be businesses easier for those businesses. I'm saying that's a potential goal, that we might do that in some fashion, addressing that in some fashion. Judy's mouth is hanging open. Again, you're not, you're doing great stuff. I'm simply saying in terms of, there are impediments to somebody opening a business in the city of Oneonta. A lot of things that the city has nothing to do with.
Yeah, some of those things are
Yes.
outside of our
I
control.
was told that one of the people were asking $5,000 a month for one of the storefronts.
That seems high, but doesn't mean
Seems
it's
like
not
they
true.
don't wanna rent it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around the six priorities that right, you're saying six to seven at the most.
We could
I mean,
change them.
yeah, it can be whatever you'd like it to be, but yeah.
So overladen with different priorities, we'll never get anything done,
Right.
so.
So one, oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that night we tried to use six as the thing, but we understood that we might have to add on a seventh one. We just didn't wanna get too top heavy where we weren't gonna get so bogged down, but.
right, well, cause each of these things has several things underneath it, and the blanket gets bigger, and it gets harder to get to the corners. One thing that I was gonna say, I noticed on this implementation matrix that a lot of these things are ongoing, and I think that if something, so there are a lot of things that we already do, right? Like we responsibly borrow, that even though I don't wanna assume that they go without saying, I think if we're gonna create a strategic plan, even if it's an ongoing thing, it's worth in the key priorities or key strategies, naming what we think those things are that are the building blocks of success, and some of them may be new, but it's just in terms of like keeping what is important in mind.
I already have these.
Okay, good. So, that's all, so for example, you're talking about economic development, and Judy is doing a lot with that, and shaking her head like, we already do X, Y, Z. I think if, we include those things as things that are being done and we want to continue to be done because they are working, then that keeps them on the priority list,
I would agree.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's all.
just jump into that point is, thinking about what it is the city is already providing that maybe goes unnoticed on a, 360 out of 365 days of the year. All the things we're already doing, and how do those work into here? They might, there might not be a specific action that needs to be on here, but somehow, ultimately the strategic plan should in some way incorporate everything we're doing and trying to do. So I would just kind of ask the question maybe in a different way about number one anyway, what makes the city financially strong now?
And what can we do to strengthen that?
And what might we do to strengthen
Yeah.
that? And then the same thing with operational excellence or any of these other ones.
Right.
Because I think that's one of the things, staff, we were talking about the comprehensive plan. What's missing from that is there's hardly a mention of the police department or any actions that are being taken with respect to public safety or, code enforcement. So, I mean, it is typically, and ours is more of a planning land use type of document, but I think we can look at, with both documents as we go forward, making sure that they're incorporating everything we're doing so that we're not coming up with essentially a wish list of things that we'd like to aspire to, but forgetting that 98% of our time is already, or 198% of our time is already allocated to the daily activities and all that. So it's kind of, I think we need to keep that in mind and make a balance.
Yeah, I think just rephrasing the question at the top, or the statement at the top, kind of brings us there.
Right.
Cecilia, did you want to add something? Okay. Oh, Ginny, did you, let me just go to Ginny real
Can I
quick.
just jump in?
Of course.
I just want to add for just food for thought. When we wanted to add the infrastructure section under financial, I just would like you to consider the infrastructure and asset management will affect a lot of different areas within the city. It would be all of our water and sewer lines, all of our valves, our street lights, our traffic lights, all of that. I think that category warrants its own area only because it's so wide-ranging citywide for all of the many different aspects that happens in the city. I do understand that it's financially important, but I think for that area, there's gonna be so many things that we need to highlight in it. It may warrant its own, it's just food for thought for you to consider.
So you did
I
have-
recalled my question. I know you maybe already said this, Greg. Are we working towards filling in these various priorities with specific actions tonight, or are we going to?
I'd like to work in that direction. Obviously, we want to, figure out what those 6 or 7 or whatever it is things are. And then, I put 1 through 7 here, but as we were looking at this, I think maybe, 3 or 4 is probably more appropriate beneath each of those. So
Okay.
we're working our way down
Okay.
down in levels, so level 1 and level 2.
For key strategies.
Yeah, so I think, my notes here, I'm putting bold text where someone's saying like cross-promoting city and campus events. That might be a key strategy that would fit in somewhere. So, we're not finalizing anything tonight, but if you come up with these ideas, then we can start plotting them in and seeing how they fit, and I think continue the conversation next time.
Katie?
I have a follow-up process question, which is that we've identified, council, stakeholders, and staff as the people who would kind of come up with the key strategies. So I think that you sort of answered, like, we're just sort of plotting it out and what it could look like, but, I know that, it's mostly us up here sucking up the air, and, we don't have any stakeholders in the room, so I just think, like, maintaining flexibility as we think about these, because we want others' input as well. And I don't know what that looks like. I guess that was my process question, like, how do we then go about implementing or obtaining, their feedback as well?
I think, I'll take a stab. Judy, did you have something? But we have a comprehensive plan. Granted, it's from 2019, but I think that's a good place to start. There's been a ton of stakeholder input there. I don't think that, because we're sort of in the middle of this process, the strategic plan, I think ideally there's not a big, long community outreach and engagement, stakeholder, direct input into it. It's because it is, like Stephen explained, implementing the broader plan. But obviously you're connected with your constituents and can gather information, and maybe as you draft something, maybe you put it out there for feedback.
If
Say,
I could just
okay,
follow
we've
up.
drafted
We
this,
did
and
hear from department heads in our last strategic plan.
Yeah, I think, well, if I could just follow up, I think that, if we could really maybe nail down what the 6 or 7 big ideas are, because we're saying that that's a council decision, and then go from there, maybe we can identify some of these level 2 things, but I'm not even necessarily talking about the community. I'm saying, like, and I said this before, like, if we're going to have as a major strategic priority, connecting with the college community, then not even necessarily students, but, saying we want to, like, I like how this is set out, right? Like, we have goals, and then we have the things that we're going to do to do those goals. And I know that you're saying, like, goal 2, the orange is level 2, but I think those are the things, I don't know, like, those are the things that we bring to SUNY and Hartwick and Job Corps, and say, we want to integrate, this is one of our major strategic priorities, can we talk about the things, and not specific actions, like the level 2 things that we can do, and then we bring those back and we say, okay, what are the actions that we can do based on those level 2 things? So identifying, I think what we could do is nail down our strategic priorities and identify who those stakeholders might be. As we work to flesh out what some of the level 2 things are, but then having, once we do our work at level 1, then we can bring in, some of the level 2 stuff, and from the people that we've identified as having an interest in level 2. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, real quick,
Thank
and
you.
then if I could just real quick, then Scott, you can have, just to piggyback off that, Craig, because we can't assume to know what their needs are, we need to
100%.
hear from them what their needs are. So for us to guess, key strategies and goals, would be getting ahead of ourselves. So bringing in people from the college and Job Corps would be helpful.
This was my initial claim when we started this discussion in terms of public engagement. And I think what Greg has argued, if I'm not mistaken, is that there's been plenty of, and this was also my reading of the comprehensive plan, there's lots of public engagement.
Right.
How many people from Job Corps have been involved in this plan?
In,
I wasn't involved in 2019, but
How many people
Okay,
in Job Corps were
I
involved
don't
in
know.
this plan?
but
About that information.
basically what,
What was the, I have to look back to see if the prior
I think this is a reflection of that.
was
So,
in.
we had
Can
the,
I just say something about this? What you're talking about now is more of a comprehensive plan
well,
approach, and, a lot of this has to be staff driven, and we need to keep that in mind about our capacity as staff.
right,
So some of these items that you're putting in here, one of the first items that will be under the action item is more staff. So I think you have to keep that in mind too. This strategic plan is, you need to jump in there too. I think is focused on city staff and what we can accomplish as well. Where the comprehensive plan has a lot of items that city staff is need to be working on.
right.
The organizations are, they're identified here in the implementation matrix, who they felt they should lead on a lot of these things. But the strategic plan is really, it's our tool of how we're gonna take your goals and what we
Suggesting that we have some huge, like, public input thing, but I think that what Shannon was saying is that, we've taken the comprehensive plan that was developed with community input and developed these things that are in front of us here. And this is just a reflection back of that, of saying, okay, so the community has identified these goals for us, we've defined them, now we don't wanna presume how best to accomplish these goals that also involve you. We want you to be part of us defining strategies, and then it's actions, right? And that's not for them to say, like Greg was saying, well, you need to buy a new fire truck and you need to X, Y, Z. It's just about saying, like, these are things that could be great. And then setting direction from there, but also including the things that we're already doing. So it's not about them setting what's reasonable or what's not reasonable from some outside entity, but I think it's about reflecting back and saying, like, okay, we've heard what has been put forward in the comprehensive plan, and and so we wanna prioritize these things. Can you help us make the right decisions,
Want to go to Scott?
Sure.
Sorry,
So
Scott.
can we, no, that's all right, can we agree, get whether we have 6 or 7 priorities, we're going at it about 2.5 hours, and then maybe come back, do another meeting to try to do the rest of it. I don't know about anybody else, I didn't have time to eat before I came from work,
Yeah,
and it's starting to wear out a little bit.
yeah.
So, I actually thought, Katie, you were gonna go down this path. So, going to page 1 on this document that Greg gave us, the council is responsible for creating strategic priorities.
Right.
And that's kind of where I was trying to lead the conversation, so
Yes.
we can just pick our 6 for tonight. And so just to kind of recap,
Yes.
I strongly feel that our strategic priority number 1 should be financial strength and operational excellence. And I just kindly put it out there that we could change priority number 5 to match with our comprehensive plan, just the title, campus and community relations, just recognizing that they are 50% of our population, and that, we should acknowledge that.
Can we make that 7?
Yeah.
Nobody's opposed to a 7.
Yeah, we can put in
Nobody's opposed.
as, really,
As far
put
as
as
my
many as we
question
need,
is,
yes.
could we do that?
Yes, we can.
And Kate, I just want to get quickly back to your point, your
Okay.
question about reflecting, this being a reflection back
Mhm.
at the needs and potential actions. My understanding was we heard from department heads precisely for that reason in our
there are things that are, because it's about the community, there are things that we've identified, what am I trying to say? Like stakeholders being people who would be influenced by the decisions that we make, right? And so, for example, creating a strong neighborhood in my neighborhood is my number one priority on council, right? That would fit in with campus and community relations. But to Shannon's point, I don't presume to know all of the ways that I'm able to do that. So if we talk with people who, you know, might have some insight into that, like I'm finding having Bryce on council, just as someone who's regularly on campus, has been so helpful for me. But if we're able to talk to people who, you know, have access to the obstacles to these things and can help us identify what they are, then we can work with staff to figure out what the actions could be to remove those obstacles, and then staff can tell us like whether or not that's reasonable, you know. But I think that I don't want to say, well, I think we need to X, Y, Z. I want that to be a more of a collaborative discussion, not a broad sweeping, let's bring in the whole college community and they can tell us what they want us to do thing, but just like, you know, maybe the director of Greek life, maybe there's an off-campus representative, maybe there's, you know, people that we could speak to that could help us understand maybe what we could be doing differently and prioritizing to help achieve our goal.
Potentially, the student government on both campuses could
Right.
wind up doing a bit of a survey and then be reporting to the council what they had come up with.
Right, and I think it also helps inform them, right? This is what we're trying to do, and they can say, okay, well, you know, we could actually do this up on campus, and maybe that would help too. So it just becomes, again, more collaboration at like an early stage so that we have a shared goal. That's kind of my vision for encouraging stakeholders' input in key strategies. It's just understanding, you know, what our role could be, what their role could be toward a shared
So
future.
relative to what Len is saying, identifying our 6 or 7,
Yeah,
or
that would be
whatever
so
it may
good.
be, and also I think what Scott was saying was that this is likely to be a kind of a months-long process, and that would allow us to have some time to be informed by some of these folks that we've already identified, just in some of this conversation coming from the colleges, for instance. That might help us, and Job Corps, sorry.
Right.
And the Job Corps as well.
But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just to further this a little bit, like, you know, yes, we can have people, we can have heads come and we can have, you know, outside of the college situation, right? But there's still a greater community that doesn't always get put into the conversation. They get overlooked and marginalized, and they're not even like mentioned. We're just focused on the colleges and such. So, I mean, you know, just to agree and to
Well-
piggyback off what you're saying.
It would just be under a different bullet. We just have the colleges as a bullet.
Right.
So we could identify who the stakeholders could be under the different bullets.
Again, I'm gonna go to Luke, but just it sounds like we're driving toward determining these 6 or 7 different
Yeah.
categories and having multiple meetings, but Luke?
Yeah, I would like to maybe see how folks feel about, just to kind of a point to go on, for talking about students, whether maybe we could tack it onto, or it says community inclusiveness maybe, and student engagement, and student, or make it a 7th bullet, just to kind of maybe move this forward a little bit. What are your thoughts on that? Seems like a good place to put it. I agree with you on kind of keep the 6 there, or we could do a 7th, but just to kind of focus maybe a little bit more.
But I think that we have to have this 7th, right? Because Junie suggests the infrastructure of asset management.
That's why I
What
said
is
for
it?
number 6, community inclusiveness and student engagement.
Yeah.
I would personally like them to be 2 separate things,
Okay.
but,
That's
because I think
trying to get us.
they're both really big topics, and I don't think, I think they need to be separated.
Okay, so both number 7, student engagement,
Campus and community
Campus and
relations.
community, yeah, there's,
however we want to say it. That sounds good.
I think just like, for example, right, the sustainability and natural environment thing, like, obviously there are people who are in that space. There's people on staff who are working toward that. There are people who are in that space who know more than we do. So it'd be great to get some ideas of what the city could be doing to move forward, and then we, between the city and staff, can determine what's reasonable for the city to take on. So that's kind of my take on that. But yeah, I think these are,
So should we just run
Fine,
through
aside
and see
from-
if we've got all of our categories? I think that's what
sure.
is that what we decided we wanna do at this point, is make certain that we know what all of our containers are essentially? So we're all agreed on safe and healthy community, I presume, right? Are we?
Yeah.
Are there any out of these 6 now, 7, that we would remove, or one was pitching to maybe move one of them, kind of tucked under another, but maybe if we're looking at having 7 or even 8 of these priorities, it could make some sort of sense to kind of keep it independent, at least for now.
I think I'm good for at least for now. I appreciate what Loveland's saying.
Mhm.
Not but, that's just not what I'm saying. I think as it stands tonight, I'm comfortable with these, with the strategic number 7 talking about, I hope everyone forgive me, similar Scott, like that, again, I'm getting a little boggy. If there's a number 7, discussing students, working with the college community, I'm happy with these 7.
And sure, and I might even wonder whether or not if we said students, staff, faculty, we might then be including high school, because we're trying to retain some of those folks, and also Job Corps and any of the other, potentially, connective institutions.
Education, the umbrella.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and there, Greg, I definitely agree, even adding, like, you add like a tourism, like, I'm thinking of Cooperstown also, or village like that. It's the things that we as a city don't understand because we don't run those operations. We have to do a better job of connecting with those stakeholders so that we can do things that work under their operation. So I agree, it kind of fits all together, really, if you think about it. Like I was just, Luke, I appreciated that, cause I thought about the high school students as well.
Exactly.
For example, Shannon, like, I was thinking about this, cause I was working with Mrs. Speller for Job Corps. They're doing the chess thing, right? They've been working with college students. Melts plays chess, high school students, middle school students. So just using the chess example, but basically it all correlates. Cooperstown also really sure can play chess. Now you take that with every other variable, with anything, with gaming and other things. People, you could see our city have all of those components come together doing events together, which would be a cool thing.
Right. I wonder, not to extend this intentionally, but so tourism is an economic development driver. It's also, it drives a couple of these things here, and also you're looking at just basically engagement, because we're looking again at trying to recruit and retain individuals who have stated to many of them that there wasn't enough to do here, isn't enough to do here, and that's what they leave. Is that component here being addressed, or is that something that needs to reside all of its own? Yes, Katie?
I don't think that it's being addressed, and so I would suggest that we update strategic priority number 1 to be financial strength and economic viability, and add operational excellence as a key strategy toward financial strength, because it reduces waste.
What was the last, I didn't hear the last.
Oh, I just said, I think we could add operational excellence under financial strength, because it's like a reduced waste kind of thing.
Thoughts? Yeah? Yeah, that's a good.
Cool.
Scott,
Scott, you okay? Shall we start to expedite our meeting now?
Can you repeat that, financial strength and?
Yeah.
Economic viability,
Viability, okay.
and then add operational excellence as like a
Yep.
key strategy.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think, we're still at 7, and did we determine that we want to, yeah, that we wanted to throw recruitment retention or something akin, you're right?
He's good.
Yep,
Recruitment retention.
in some fashion. And then, so we're at 8, I think, and that might probably be the catch-all, for most of this.
So it becomes a skill for recruitment and retention. Is that what
You're asking me,
Just anybody who will answer.
Yeah,
It becomes a recruitment and retention, is that?
I mean, what realistically would the cities, aside from the things identified in the strategic priorities, which would recruit people, cause we would be like a nice community,
Yeah.
what actions would the city take towards recruitment and retention?
there'd be marketing and promotion. Sure, right.
Retention or recruitment could be part of community
Sure.
inclusiveness.
Yeah. Cause I think it's also in the campus and community relations box, you know, so, seriously, I'm gonna design it.
I feel like we've made
I'm gonna send it to you.
really good progress here,
Yeah,
and
appreciate it.
if folks are good with kind of putting a pin in it at this point,
Yeah.
is everybody pretty okay with putting a pin in it now, and we'll
I
come back to
actually,
this?
I do wanna talk about the letter. Pat, I wanna let you go, I'm sorry. But I do wanna talk about the letter that you sent to the neighborhood.
I have something that I'd like to talk about too.
Mhm.
So did everybody get a chance to look at it?
Yes.
And what are people's thoughts and feelings?
I first saw the letter March 27th, I think it was. And I was wanted to see that, it came from the mayor and went out to the community immediately after a town council meeting. For me, I didn't feel that was appropriate. We're supposed to be working together. We all took Saturday to learn how to communicate with each other. I just thought, for me personally, that it was inappropriate.
I appreciate that.
You're saying that, you want help improving your aim and stuff. And this letter, like, had it been, hey, like, here's what happened, here's how people voted, hey, here's how people voted, here's how to reach out, right? Like, that would have been cool, that would have been acceptable, but it kind of like goes beyond that. Like, it goes into like, you're trying to sway them and get them into this space of being fearful that this thing might be taken from them. And then you're suggesting like how you're gonna be there to support them and back them on this. But this was really your proposal, not theirs. And it's kind of just, it goes like just a few steps beyond maybe where it should have been.
That's, I don't dispute that. I will say that, I don't dispute that. I will say that I spent quite a bit of time with quite a number of merchants who are quite freaked out and who signed a petition, who had an expectation, it was the April 2nd meeting, they had an expectation that what they were signing on to wasn't going to be a huge issue for council.
But
Where
why
did
did they
they-
have that expectation?
Because I didn't think that this was gonna be a huge issue for council.
You constantly kind of talk about promises and offering these things, and you talk about your promises in here, and you've made it an us thing, and I've got your back, and don't worry, but then you talk about how this failed, and how it's council's issue, and you're basically, the juxtapositioning you're worried about from other people, you kind of set up in this letter, and you create towards us.
Again,
And it's not a fun place to be in.
I don't dispute that, but I am saying that on the other side of my collection of 25 signatures, who were very, hopeful that there was going, let me just finish. 25 signatories who were very hopeful that we were going to make something happen for them, that they know is timelined, that they know is, it's not, nothing's guaranteed in life. The less time you have to make something work, the less guarantee that you have, and they're aware of that. And we were not certain on April 3rd, day after the council meeting, that where the future of this is going to be. they were concerned. And I, having spent the length of time with them that I did over the course of a couple of days, felt it was required of me to provide them with not only, this is where we're at, I have confidence, which I'd like to say thank you, wasn't misplaced, that we were able to make this work. It did require some, modification, and I appreciate, in fact, that I think the modifications make the proposal stronger, so sometimes a little bit of oxygen is a healthy thing. But they needed to know, and they also don't know, frankly, what to do in a scenario where they think that something makes so much sense to them, and it did, and it does, didn't wind up passing. They don't understand that a lot of people are not tuned into Common Council. They have no idea how it works. And so and I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying that anyone's wrong here. Maybe I'm saying that I'm wrong. But I felt that because they don't know what their next step is, they should be informed. They should inform that, again, they should inform council as to, that this is important to them.
Absolutely.
And that was the intention of the correspondence.
But the reason I got this from somebody was because they thought that you had a problem with us, and they weren't understanding why you have an issue with us in the council. And so, as I read this, I can see that you're hurt and that you are trying to make sure that you rally whatever you're working on, and you're wanting to do the best for your citizens. Like, I see that here, but it's like several steps too far, like the way that this is. And it was received as some of our citizens, which you were targeting, as you were upset with us, you were positioning yourself against us, and they were concerned.
Yeah. Again, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. In the moment, being responsive to folks that were looking to me for an answer as to what the heck happened, and moving quickly to provide them the information. The information that I provided them is what we're referencing. Could it have stood the test of sleep on it? Probably. So I don't dispute that, and I appreciate the concern, and one of the reasons that I spent some time crafting a conversation to start this, not a conversation, but my remarks to start this meeting, was because, in fact, in reflection, it is, I did say, not perfect. We are trying to get to the same place. It's easier when we get to the same place as a team. Personally, me, right now, telling you, especially going through the strategy, the strategic planning that we have here, I'm committed to becoming increasingly transparent, especially in the pre-planning stages of things, so that the council can be as involved as possible, so that we do get ourselves to a place where we can have consensus, which is the main plank. That's how you build teamwork, is that
But
people are in consensus.
This letter, just so you know, speaks to that you were trying to work with us a little bit, depending on who's reading it, right? Who's the
Again,
receiver.
and I've given
So
you,
I think,
I've given
you
you
know.
my responses,
Yeah.
my honest response.
Okay.
And I am not disputing a single thing that you say.
Alrighty, anybody, did anyone else want to mention that?
Yeah, I think it's, I'll just say very briefly, because it's late and it's late. Maybe that's all I should say. But I will say that I think when I read the letter, I thought, okay, this is a mayor who didn't get a plan that he wanted passed. That's the story. And if the reader read it as a diss on the council, then that's how the citizen reader understands it, interprets it.
I appreciate. There is just one thing I guess I would add, is that one of the hardest things to do, and I'm not saying that what I wrote was perfect. I'm not. But one of the hardest things that you can do when you're working with a group of people who have very unique and very specific interests that are keeping their business alive, as a for instance, to keep them positive, to keep them, engaged, and to give them hope, is a huge and hard task. And it's really important that we don't have our merchants feeling like well, you can't do anything in the city hall. And they do say that, and again, you know, I'm not disputing a single thing you say, and it could have used 24 hours. I felt compelled to connect with my, the folks who this has given some hope to, and to make sure that they didn't lose that hope. You could always, in you know, retrospect, go back and clean things up a little bit, and I could have and I should have.
Well, for me, I can tie that letter right into the 10 minutes that you spent lecturing this council tonight. And for me, I didn't appreciate them being lectured either. To suggest that those of us that are in our second term haven't worked hard to get here, to suggest that the ones that are new, they've had a lot piled on top of them since January 1st. I wouldn't even want to be in their shoes right now. Again, I can't stress to you enough what I asked you in November after the election. Please work with this council. Please work with the council. Be transparent. You have a lot of ideas, but you know by now that you have to run those ideas to this council. There's 8 other people that have thoughts and suggestions too.
But I think,
And we've observed this multiple times in your term, that you have these ideas, you go to try and move them forward, but you're not communicating with the council. And so moving forward, I just heard that you want to be more transparent. I hope from this day forward, you're more transparent with this council on any of your ideas that you'd like to move forward.
that's something I can absolutely agree to. I've got zero problem with that. I will say that I do believe, and I've believed and I will continue to believe, that it's the mayor's job to provide the vision and to provide the leadership, and that will come in some fashion, if not fully formed, at least partially formed. And so it would be a difficult thing for me to come to you with just square one. I don't think you'd appreciate it. I think that I would hope that having some vision shared with you, the argument that I take, and I agree, is that it could always be done at a point where the council could have more input, especially around how can we make this a better strategy. That's how you build teams. That's how teams wind up becoming successful, and that's been my goal. That'll continue to be my goal, and I have, you have my commitment that I will work hard, continue to work hard, and potentially, I guess, work harder to ensure that the council has the opportunity to work as the team that I hope that we will be to achieve. Some of the goals are daunting, and it would be a lot, as busy as you say, and you're right, as council members are, to simply hand them something that's not been at least strategized. And in the case of the things that we were just recently talking about, the Renaissance piece specifically came of several months worth of meetings with key staff, key department head staff. This didn't just come from me. So there was a lot of strategizing, and where the council came into it, again, you got it in January, but that discussion, I think I could have probably landed on a little bit harder to ensure that it happened at an earlier time. As busy as we were, we had a lot of things that came up that kind of sidetracked a lot of council meetings, as we're all well aware, and we were compromised for time. It's not an excuse.
Several of us brand new members walked into and had to start with
Exactly.
those pieces.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
if
But there will be,
someone-
I'm sorry, but there will be many opportunities tonight. That's what I was alluding to. There'll be many opportunities to be engaged in ways that are not this, that the community sees and that the community appreciates. And one of those ways, just, if I can just, transition a bit, is by being present on Saturday at the April 27th Earth Day festivities. It's not often the case where we see a majority of council members in public, events like that, and it means a lot to the public when we do. And if there's something that requires a little bit of effort, if you're able to provide that effort on that day, You know, that you find yourself doing that too. That's really what I'm talking about. We're constantly looking for the community to step up, and I feel like we want to show them too. We also want to walk that walk, and so we'll all do better. I'll certainly try to lead the way and be as transparent as I possibly can be. Scott?
So, first of all, tonight, I think you were completely unprofessional. That's not a leadership, what you did there chastising the council. That is not trying to work. You can try to spin that any way you want. That's not trying to work with the council. I spent my time in the principal's office getting yelled at, okay? I'm not gonna take that again from you. That's completely inappropriate. You wanna work with the council wants to work with you. That doesn't mean we're gonna support all your ideas. That doesn't mean we're gonna vote the way you want us to vote. That doesn't mean we're gonna sit there and just blanket yes everything. There's also a difference. I use the phrase a lot, words mean something. And since I think you took a direct shot at me because I'm the one that brought the motion up about the finance committee, there's a difference between say, I take that under consideration versus I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay? Words mean something. And if the words aren't being said the right way, the receiver's gonna take them a different way. So either there's a problem from the sender to the receiver, or the receiver isn't receiving what the sender is trying to get communicated to them. All right, I have backed you a lot, Mark, and you know that. But that's not a leader, what you did earlier. That's counterproductive. Very counterproductive. And I take my lumps because there's times I flatten my mouth out before I should. But I've never been so upset at a council meeting as I was at 6 o'clock when we started. To the point that I think we all should have got up and walked out. That's what should have happened tonight. Okay? I want to back your ideas. Sometimes I don't understand your ideas. You go, and I've always said your heart's in the right spot. And I do believe that. And I say that to everybody in the public. I do believe your heart's in the right spot. But at the end of the day, when I read this charter, what the charter says is we're responsible. You're supposed to work with the council to help drive the council's priorities and stuff. That's why you're liaison to the city administrator. It doesn't mean we back your ideas. It doesn't mean we're gonna back your policies. It doesn't mean we're gonna go ahead and say this renaissance is a good thing. It doesn't mean we're gonna be against city staff or for city staff. That's our job. We ran too, Mark. We're elected officials. Just as much as you are. And to sit there and say that put yourself on a pedestal higher than everybody else is not appropriate. Each one of us are responsible to our wards. Plus, we're also responsible for the city as a whole. So it's not any different. The only difference is you get elected by everybody. That's the only difference. I don't care if you won by 1 vote or 2/3 vote. You won. We get that. We're trying to work with you. But to have that is so counterproductive that it makes me want to look at you and say, we should take the Renaissance program and scrub the whole thing and let's start over. Because I don't feel as though that was you showing that you want to work with us. And I am very upset, and I probably shouldn't really say anything. The smartest person who I ended up marrying told me I need to learn to keep my mouth shut sometimes, and apparently I probably should listen for this one. That's how I feel right now. And I don't know, Mark, I don't know if there's any mending what just happened tonight. I really don't. If that letter, this isn't the first time you've done this to us. When I say you have gone off to the paper and you've said something, we read it, and then all of a sudden it's coming up for a vote. Catching us off guard.
Yeah.
And look around, Mark, I'm not the only one saying it. Everybody, they're shaking their heads over there, they're shaking their heads. That's not fair. Because then we look like heels if we vote against it. Or we look like heels if we vote for it. We get put in these predicaments we shouldn't be in. And That's basically what everybody's saying. But this council is the driving force. The council has the power. The council's gonna see to do what they need to do to drive the things forward. The council is strong. This council is probably one of the stronger councils I've seen in a long time. In the way that we vote, in the way that we're talking to each other, in the way that we're doing things. And I'm not gonna let anybody disrupt that, because that is a great thing to have. So, again, I'm glad you're saying you're gonna be transparent. I wanna work with you. I think today was a great step with the strategic plan. I think going forward, hopefully we can mend this and move forward. But that was very counterproductive to what we were trying to accomplish and what you were trying to do, and that was not Merrill-like in any way, shape, or form. So,
Well, I appreciate your comments, Scott, and I'm sorry that you found that any of that was personal. It's not. It wasn't intended to be personal to anyone. What it was intended to be was what I put out there, which is that we are a lot stronger when we are working as a team, and we're a lot stronger when we are more supportive of our staff than we've been, and we are stronger, frankly, as a city when people who are doing their jobs are feeling like those jobs are respected and not being overseen beyond what's reasonable. And that's one of the things that I think that there's a potential paradigm shift that I'd like to think will happen in council. I think that we have a tremendous, I'm with you, Scott. I think we've been a very good and strong council. And I think we work together, and certainly not looking at blanket endorsements of anything that I'm saying right now, but just to just give a seed time to grow, and we work together, and we find ourselves in a place where we are accomplishing some of the things that, as I said, are pretty daunting, and the community absolutely needs to see us make some significant headway on. And that's only going to happen if we're working together, and if we understand that the priorities of time and time management are going to be more likely something that works to our favor if we are if we're allowing delegating essentially to the professionals, and we start to take on more of a kind of a holistic strategy
Hold on.
around the
You're
community.
getting off base though, Mark.
Not
Like,
intentionally.
you're going to other things that weren't the point, right? Like, we want people to be respected who are good at their jobs. Like, the disrespect that did occur did happen, right? And it's terrible that it happened, and the whole moving forward thing from that disrespect hasn't happened since, right? But when you sit and you give this speech and you literally, hopefully you'll watch it and re-listen to it again, where you juxtaposition yourself and kind of scold council. That's not beginning off us and mending things. That's not you suggesting that we're doing this. It's, hey, you guys aren't doing, you guys aren't showing up. What did you think our takeaway would be? What was the takeaway?
Well, the takeaway certainly is that this has struck a nerve, and I know that sometimes it takes a little bit of discomfort to, including me. I'm not the most comfortable person in this dais right now, but a little discomfort sometimes is a healthy thing, and I think that we, working together, mutually respectful of one another, will get to a place that we're stronger, and that we'll be glad for that fact. So again, I don't know what more I can say besides that was not only my intention, but I think that will wind up being the reality, and I guess we can continue to beat this, but I think that's where we are. Yes, Don?
I just want to say something briefly. I did felt like I was scolded, but I've had worse, so I'll get over it. But I think of it in political terms. If you're trying to build consensus on the council, you probably shouldn't scold people. You should build consensus, and by counting votes beforehand, that kind of thing. That's all I have to say about it.
I appreciate that. Again, so, you know, the commitment to transparency is there. I think the commitment to teamwork, I heard this all night tonight, the commitment to teamwork is certainly there. There is the consensus that we have a very good team working in city government among staff and department heads is there. All of this is very healthy. And the conversation that has been generated by something that was uncomfortable for me to write, for me to deliver, arguable as to whether or not it was something that could or should have been provided. Nonetheless, here we are, and I think that, you know, we move forward. There's no turning back the clock to 5:55, and as I said, I respect no fabrication there. I respect what every single individual here brings to council and brings to the city, and we'll see what we can do about maximizing that by working as a team. All right, so if there's nothing else,
Just the last point, I think bottom line, just as a team, and just to you, Mark, and then us as a team, I think it just has to be bottom line coming in, you know, as a new council member. I think bottom line, there's a difference between communication when it comes to disagreeing and when it comes to taking shots, right? And we gotta even, and we're all, I'm sure we'll all be guilty at some point, but there comes a point, that's what government is. There's gonna be issues where, for example, honestly, we're all on the same page about the Renaissance project, right? And we all want it to go forward, but there are some things that just get brought up and it's questioned. It doesn't mean that we're not a part of the team.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, if you have a question about traffic flow, us as council members and you and Greg and everybody, if something happens and someone gets hurt through traffic or something as little as that, we're all getting the phone calls and we're all dealing with it, right? So we have to ask those questions. We have to have the data. Just because 25 business owners sign something, and that's a key data that I was like, bam, you know, that's gonna probably get a vote yes. Those other questions do have to be tailored out before something happens. If you look at that letter, really realistically, there was only two votes, right? That, you know, and also, you know, unfortunately it being a Thursday meeting and missing, you know, things happen. And we just came off of the RSS thing where it took 3 months and it was the biggest split thing ever. You got residents against it, you got residents for it. So it comes down to, okay, you have to just make a decision basically. You can't have data that says it's gonna be one way. So you just have to understand from council, it's harder, it's not as easy as it looks.
And Bryce, do you mind if
And
I
I'm
just
sorry, I'm
spin
late.
off there? If we could take the word promises out of things, because we can't always fulfill promises. Right, and it's one thing to have good intentions and have a good heart and want what's best for our citizens and to show up for them, but I've never made anybody a promise, because that means I then have to keep it, which means that I then can get back to the corner and write letters like you're putting out here and sitting up here at the podium, because I feel hurt and unheard and unsupported and, you know, whatever you had felt in that moment, right? Like, so the promises could be problematic, and if we take away the promises and make it something we're working on, because really Bryce and I, you were gonna bring, I mean specifically that item, you were gonna bring it back to the next meeting, and we would have had the opportunity to then vote on it as we did. I'm not sure where the information you talked about in the letter was about the specifics regarding it, but I just wish we had PR money. That would be helpful.
We can prioritize it strategically.
Strategically plan for PR.
And at the end of the day, we're a team, and I agree, moving forward, it'll be good. It's just I have to say my piece, just because that's just coming in, that's the little things that.
I'm gonna make one comment for 1 minute,
So
but at the end, I
just
guess.
wanted to apologize, I mean, no disrespect, I'm going to leave, I've got to leave, I apologize.
That's fine.
Have a
Bye.
good night, no disrespect, disrespect, and have a good night.
Love you, Luke.
Good
I
night.
like who
Katie?
I just wanted to underscore something that Bryce said, which is that disagreement is not inherently disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important that we are free to disagree in this setting, because otherwise, what's the point? I mean, I don't mean to be oppositional or anything, but I agree, like, it's our responsibility to ask questions as we have them, either on behalf of our constituents or ourselves, to ensure that we're making the best decisions for our community, for which we all care deeply. I work a full-time job and a part-time job and do this and have a 5-year-old. And so to come here and be told that I'm not doing enough publicly is really frustrating. To, you know, be made to feel as though having opinions or questions is not okay does not, like, that's like completely the opposite of the reason why all of us are here. So it just, the climate is not such that we are able to really be a team and be heard. And I only wanted to say that because Lauren asked me my opinion, and it's gonna be in the paper tomorrow, and I don't wanna not say it to your face. I would much rather express it in person than have you open the paper and be like, wow, Katie really kept her mouth shut. So that's, again, my probably slightly more than 2 cents. Thank you very much for listening.
I appreciate that, Katie. And I appreciate actually all of it. I appreciate the constructive nature of the criticism. I hope you do appreciate the fact that the intention here is to strip away some of the things that have not worked. Some council members have not been a part of this at all, and they've inherited it, but it's important that we do look for opportunities to work as a team. I'm thrilled with the connection that you made there, and so many people in their conversation tonight made. The idea of working as a team means, you know, let's have disagreements, let's have differences of opinion, all good, but let's look at working together in a way that all of us, myself included, are part of our learning process within the context of whatever problem it is that we're trying to solve, because none of us have all of the answers, certainly myself not included, but we can certainly work together as a team. That is my, you know, that has been my long history, and there's no reason to think that that's not going to be replicable here. I'm looking around and I know that it can be. So with that, if there's nothing else at 9:17, I do hope that everyone does have an opportunity. We won't be back together again until May 7th, but that everyone does have an opportunity to spend a little bit of time in support of the Earth Day Festival. A lot of effort has gone into that from you know, a number of our staff. It's really been the first city-generated promotion that I can think of, at least in my memory. I don't know that there's certainly not at this size. So so let's all be pleased, supportive of that and of one another. And again, I thank you all.
Would they have a DJ?
I'm sorry?
That's a good question. If there's gonna be music, I can't imagine there not being.
Yeah, there'll be music, yes. Actually, Steve might be able to talk about it, but there'll be music in Muller Plaza.
Morgan's been talking about it.
Not particularly high amplification. Yeah. Interestingly enough, most of it provided by the artist community at the Lofts on Dietz. So there you go.